Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Cause of Death. GLUO had a personal experience of Sukinghan's outstanding fighting ability. If GLUO could crush ordinary people, then facing Sukinghan, he would be the one who was crushed. But, even Sukinghan of this level still died here. However, GLUO did not believe that Sukinghan's opponent would be unscathed. Even if the murderer could kill her, he must have gone through a big battle, and it was impossible to have no traces. However, GLUO just found nothing. Could it be farther away? GLUO jumped onto the roof in a few steps, looking at the abandoned factory in the distance, and had a few different thoughts in his mind. In the end, GLUO decided to go to the factory to see Sukinghan's body. GLUO certainly would not give up. He held the already cold girl and shuttled like a ghost in the dark night, and soon reached his destination. The snow fell heavier and heavier, and the grey and black factory gradually turned white. GLUO walked among the desolate houses, and everything was silent. Because no one had come for a long time, everything in the factory was covered with thick dust. GLUO checked many places, but all the evidence showed that there had been no fighting here. How could it be? GLUO covered his forehead, feeling that everything was so incredible. Because of overusing his brain, GLUO now had a severe headache, but he gritted his teeth and refused to give up. Sukinghan, what happened? GLUO looked down at the girl in his arms. She was as quiet as a sleeping beauty. The snowflakes fell on her body, no longer melting, but dyed her with a layer of silent white. GLUO reached out and gently wiped the snow off the girl's cheek. He sat in the wind and snow, looking at her empty, with unspeakable pain in his heart. GLUO didn't know how long he was stunned. Anyway, his hair and eyebrows were covered with snow. GLUO's arms were a little stiff, so he wanted to change his posture, but when he changed his body, GLUO suddenly touched Sukinghan's pocket. What is that? GLUO reached out and took out the thing he had touched, only to find that it was Sukinghan's cell phone. GLUO pressed the power button and found that the phone was still working normally. The screen that lit up showed GLUO's series of calls and text messages. How possible? In the wind and snow, GLUO shuddered suddenly, feeling that everything was so weird. Judging from the time of Sukinghan's death, the girl was definitely still alive at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but at that time, GLUO called her. Why didn't she answer? At first, GLUO thought that Sukinghan's cell phone had been lost long ago, but now it seems that Sukinghan's cell phone has always been with her. But why didn't she answer the phone? GLUO felt that he had discovered something very important. As long as this doubt was resolved, GLUO might get a very important clue. However, GLUO thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of any hypothesis that could explain this situation. After thinking for a long time, GLUO put Sukinghan's finger on the phone and unlocked it. First of all, the address book. Incredibly, there was only GLUO in the entire phone's address book. GLUO didn't know whether he should be honored or sad. Sukinghan's phone was so clean that no one had ever sent him a message or called him except him. Of course, it could also be that she had deleted all the other apps, or Sukinghan had another phone. In addition to the address book, GLUO checked all the software. Sukinghan had basically never installed any apps. They were basically all built-in apps on the phone, which could be described as having no entertainment. As for the traces of software usage, Sukinghan cleaned them up very cleanly, leaving no records. Finally, GLUO searched through the phone and found nothing useful. The only thing that made GLUO curious was a photo. Sukinghan only left one photo on the entire phone. The photo was taken a year ago. Sukinghan probably left it because he often looked at it, but this also shows that it means a lot to Sukinghan. What group photo is this? Although GLUO tried his best to enlarge the photo, everyone in the photo was a little blurry due to the pixels. GLUO counted them. There were a total of 33 people in the group photo, including 32 children and one adult woman. Just like the class photo, the only adult woman sat among the children, with a very elegant posture. Soo Kyung-hun is also in there. Gluo stared at his phone, looking at each person one by one, and finally barely recognized Soo Kyung-hun. The girl in the photo was still young, at most 11 or 12 years old, looking a little silent, standing in the corner of the first row. This kind of photo, the first thought, is easy to think of a class photo, but the 32 children in the photo, some are 7 or 8 years old, some are 11 or 12 years old, and some are 14 or 15 years old. It is impossible for them to be in the same grade. This shows that the commonality of all of them comes from other aspects. Gluo carefully checked all aspects of the photo, but in the end he did not get any other information. Gluo had some guesses in his mind, but he was not sure. Besides, even if the guess was true, it would not be of much use. It's a bit late. Gluo checked his phone, but did not get any other clues. Gluo sent the photo to his phone, and then hugged the cold girl again. It was almost 9 o'clock, and Gluo found Soo Kyung-hun. Although the girl was dead, his journey could indeed come to an end. Now, Gluo didn't have too many distracting thoughts. He only wanted to do one thing, bury the girl. Exposing the body in the wilderness was really too cruel for this country that believed in resting in peace. The person who killed Soo Kyung-hun didn't even bother to hide the body. I don't know if it was sure that it would not leave any information clues, or to give Soo Kyung-hun the most vicious punishment. Gluo thought about these fragmented possibilities in his mind, holding Soo Kyung-hun and rushing all the way in the wind and snow. Fortunately, the cemetery is not far from here. The land in the suburbs of the city is very cheap. The hospital, crematorium, and cemetery are all in one place, which saves a lot of travel. On a snowy night, the cemetery was even more solemn and lonely. Gluo sneaked in quietly and looked at the neat rows of tombstones. Even if he was brave, he couldn't help but feel cold at this time. What are you afraid of? I'll be there soon. Gluo took a breath of cold air and walked around the cemetery, trying to find a better position. But what Gluo didn't expect was that he saw a very fresh bunch of carnations in front of a tombstone. Could it be that Soo Kyung-hun came to see her? Gluo certainly couldn't judge Soo Kyung-hun's intention of coming here just by looking at a bouquet of flowers, but this possibility was not impossible. From here to the place where Soo Kyung-hun died, it takes about 15 minutes to walk. Chapter 77, Buried. Calculating the time sequence from the beginning, around noon, Gluo went to the cake shop to deliver food to Soo Kyung-hun, and then left home around 2 o'clock. Around 2:30, Soo Kyung-hun closed the shop, went to buy carnations, and then took a taxi all the way here. If Soo Kyung-hun's destination is really the cemetery, then the time it takes to get here from the city at a normal speed should be about 1.5 hours. That is, almost exactly 4 o'clock. And that was also the time when Soo Kyung-hun saved the death return. Gluo saw Soo Kyung-hun at about 7:30. According to the condition of the body, the time of death should be 1.5 to 2.5 hours. In other words, Soo Kyung-hun should have died between 5 and 6 in the afternoon. In this case, it's really possible. Gluo squatted down, put Soo Kyung-hun's body aside, and carefully examined the handwriting on the tombstone. The photo on the tombstone is a round-faced girl with a lovely smile, named Jang Yuan. She is 1 year older than Soo Kyung-hun, and she was just 14 years old when she died, and the date of death was exactly December 24th. That's about 4 years ago. Gluo calculated the approximate time, took out his mobile phone, enlarged the group photo that Soo Kyung-hun kept, and then identified them one by one. In the end, Gluo really found a girl who looked very similar to Jang Yuan in the group photo. However, this girl looked only 8 or 9 years old. It is certain that this Jang Yuan knows Soo Kyung-hun. Soo Kyung-hun came here today, probably to visit the grave of a friend. Gluo finally figured out the reason why Soo Kyung-hun came here, and everything became logical. Someone knew the relationship between Soo Kyung-hun and this Jang Yuan, and knew that she would come to visit the grave today, so they came here to ambush her and kill her. Gluo turned his head and followed the arrangement of the tombstones to the end. There was a pine forest, which was now dyed white by the falling snow, but it is conceivable that someone was there a few hours ago, monitoring this location. It waited for Sukinghan, confirmed its target, and then killed her by unknown means. But the question is, why did Sukinghan set her save time at 4 o'clock? GLUO couldn't figure this out. Sukinghan came to pay tribute to Jiang Yuan. She must have understood her own danger, and must have known that someone might come back to ambush. In this case, would she not prepare anything? Probably not. Even if all of Sukinghan's coping methods were ineffective, forcing her to fight desperately, she finally chose death retracing. But the problem is, the time of Sukinghan's retracing could be set this morning, or even yesterday, or the day before yesterday. Wouldn't it be better to make better preparations? Why, inexplicably, encountered an ambush by the enemy and smashed her own trump card. The time coordinate of death retracing was set at 4 o'clock, and Sukinghan's death time was 1 or 2 hours later. If the opponent really had enough preparations, it would be very likely to create a lost scene. No matter how Sukinghan retraced, it was useless. He was guarded by the corpse infinitely, and finally died completely, because his soul could not hold on. Is it possible that this is the opponent's method? GLUO couldn't help but tremble all over when he thought of this possibility, and a feeling of fear gradually rose in his heart. Sukinghan's death return and his return date can be taken away, but GLUO can't take away Sukinghan's ability to save the backtracking beacon at all. That is the singularity of Sukinghan's soul, and no one can erase it. Therefore, GLUO believes that the opponent can't have any special ability to affect Sukinghan's time beacon setting, unless Sukinghan himself is willing. Mind control, or illusion? GLUO couldn't be sure of the truth of the matter. Everything at the moment was GLUO's guess. But the only thing GLUO could be sure of was that Sukinghan was definitely not so easy to be defeated and killed. Sukinghan was injured like that, but he couldn't even find the battlefield of the fierce battle. GLUO had reason to believe that the battle Sukinghan faced was not ordinary. To know the truth, I must come here immediately after the retrospection. GLUO was no longer confused at this moment. Since he had found Sukinghan, no matter what happened, or who he faced, he would rescue her. Of course, GLUO was also worried about what kind of enemy Sukinghan was, and what methods he could use to fight it. Sukinghan, no matter how many times I die, I will let you live. GLUO held the cold Sukinghan in his arms, walked forward along the arrangement of tombstones, and found a flat open space. To be honest, these cemeteries are all filled with urns, and the actual area occupied is not large. To bury a body, a large area must be dug out, and in order to prevent wild animals from digging, it must be deeper. GLUO walked back and forth for a long time, and finally chose a place that was quite pleasing to the eye. GLUO didn't know how to look at Feng Shui, so he just came casually. Anyway, Sukinghan didn't have many relatives, and he didn't have any either, so it didn't matter. There's not even a person to burn paper. GLUO didn't care about it. He originally wanted to put down Sukinghan's body and find a shovel, but seeing the quiet surroundings, GLUO was afraid that wild cats and dogs would come, so he simply held her and secretly took the shovel from the cemetery. The snow fell, and the cemetery was silvery white. The land had been frozen. GLUO dug very hard with a shovel. GLUO was very strong. It didn't take long for a half-meter deep grave to be dug. There's no coffin either. GLUO rubbed his hands. He had no choice about the current situation. In ancient times, the poor at least had a straw mat, but he had nothing now. After thinking for a long time, GLUO took off his coat and covered Sukinghan with it. Then, he put the girl in the grave and silently filled it with soil. Finally, GLUO knocked left and right, and could vaguely see that the ground where Sukinghan was buried was different from other places, but it was snowing now, so it should be covered. When the snow melted, it would take a long time, and by that time, the color of the apprentice should have come in. That's it. GLUO took off his coat and wore a single layer of clothes pitifully. It was so cold, even if he was an evolver, he still felt a little cold. But everything was worth it. GLUO didn't know whether the retrospection of his and Sukinghan's death would create a parallel world. Although it should not be considering an in, Gluo would finish it well, no matter what the circumstances. Sukinghan, don't be afraid, I will go to accompany you right away. Gluo actually thought about being buried with Sukinghan, but he had things to do right now. There were still 2 or 3 hours until 1 o'clock in the morning, and Gluo would make good use of these precious time. Soon, the 4th retrospection. Chapter 78, Wit. 30:30 p.m. December 24th, 3005. Time marker 010,016. Second round of retrospection. Gluo, as if waking up from a tired dream, Gluo regained his mind, put down the kitchen knife in his hand, and had already adapted to the inverted feeling of death returning. I died for the 4th time. Gluo took a deep breath, went to the bathroom to wash his face, looked at his spiritless self in the mirror, and wiped the mirror with his wet hands. Let everything start again. Gluo turned and walked out of the room, put on his shirt, and walked out of the house quietly. Since he already knew where Sukinghan was, Gluo would certainly not wander around anymore. He took a taxi on the street and rushed to the suburbs as fast as possible. If you drive at a normal speed, it will take about an hour and a half from the city center to the cemetery. Gluo paid 10 times the price, ran 2 or 3 red lights, and barely compressed the time to an hour. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Gluo was close to where everything happened. He had 2 choices: go directly to the place where Sukinghan's body was, or rush to the cemetery. If he went to the cemetery, the journey would be a little longer, but it would not delay him for a few minutes. It was just that Sukinghan's death was near, and they might have changed their positions during the battle. If he was closer to the place where Sukinghan died, Gluo should be able to see the scene of Sukinghan fighting the enemy and have a chance to rescue her. Everything looked very beautiful, but Gluo's worries were always lingering in his heart. Thinking of Sukinghan's weird death scene, Gluo became more and more nervous. Spring Cake Shop. The place where Gluo got off the car was the shop where he bought cakes at night. While running towards the alley, Gluo confirmed the surrounding situation and did not find any suspicious people. The taxi drove away, and Gluo walked into the alley carefully. Of course, Gluo did not see Sukinghan's figure. Obviously, she had not hidden here yet. Gluo pursed his lips, put on the mask and hood that he had prepared long ago, held 2 short knives in both hands, and walked to the other side of the alley with shallow steps. I don't know if it is because of the urban and rural transformation. There are basically no people in this block, and there are dilapidated bungalows everywhere, but there is no human breath. Gluo was anxious like an ant on a hot pot. He turned over and jumped onto the roof. He looked around and still didn't see Sukinghan. Go to the cemetery. Gluo hesitated for a moment, then quickly jumped to the roof on the other side. Because he was afraid of missing Sukinghan, Gluo was not too anxious. Looking at the wound on Sukinghan's body, Gluo felt that her fight must be very fierce, but no matter how Gluo listened, he didn't hear any fighting sounds. How is it possible? Gluo jumped off the roof, confirmed the surrounding situation, and continued to move forward. Although they were about to leave the area, Gluo still didn't see Sukinghan, nor did he hear any fighting sounds. Gluo suspected that he might have thought everything wrong. He was anxious and angry, but he didn't dare to rush to the cemetery at full speed. Bang! Just when Gluo's mind was in a mess, he suddenly heard a muffled vibration. Gluo immediately stopped and pricked up his ears to listen. Sure enough, he heard the sound of a low wall being kicked down. Sukinghan? Gluo felt relieved and ran towards the source of the sound in almost the most standard straight line without stopping. And there, Gluo did see Sukinghan. It's just, the situation is extremely weird. In the shabby and ordinary, Sukinghan staggered like a drunk, holding 2 swords in her hands, and kept swinging around, as if she was surrounded by countless monsters. The dead trees and the low wall made of mud were like paper in front of Sukinghan. She used her swinging blade to confirm that there was something beside her. Then she exerted force suddenly, and a wall of the dilapidated house disappeared. Sukinghan had her eyes open, but she seemed to be blind. She walked around among the scattered houses. Occasionally, she would step on uneven places and her body would always stagger, but before falling, she could always stabilize her body. What is going on? Jialuo looked at Sukinghan's crazy dance and slashing, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. He didn't approach Sukinghan immediately, but kept a distance of 40 to 50 meters and leaned behind her. However, Jialuo didn't find any enemies. Even if Jialuo pulled away and expanded the search range, he didn't find any suspicious people within 100 meters. Sukinghan seemed to be blinded by a ghost, just stumbling all the way, constantly waving the blade. Illusion? In order to avoid Sukinghan's accidental injury, Jialuo kept a distance of more than 10 meters. He carefully observed the girl, and was almost certain that she had encountered a talent that restrained her. Shu Yuking. Aunt Li is dead. She can never come back. We can't live in the past. We must get out. Sukinghan seemed to be pulled into a world of ghosts and monsters, walking aimlessly in the dilapidated buildings. She kept running forward, and everything along the way was destroyed. Shu Yuking, let it go. Everyone has grown up and can't be trapped in an oath. Sukinghan seemed to be persuading someone. Her cheeks were full of sweat and her voice was a little hoarse. It's a pity that her voice couldn't be conveyed. How to rescue Sukinghan? Jialuo can now be sure that Sukinghan is trapped in an illusion, but he doesn't know how to rescue Sukinghan. Thinking of Sukinghan's final death injuries, Jialuo suspected that the murderer who caused all this was watching from a distance. She was waiting for Sukinghan to be exhausted physically and mentally, and without the ability to resist, and then approached and killed Sukinghan. After all, up to now, Sukinghan only had a small wound on her right hand, and there was no damage to other places. Should I follow? Jialuo looked at Sukinghan walking aimlessly, and felt a little entangled in his heart. Should he follow her, protect her, or expand the search range to find the murderer? No matter what, if the other party wants to kill Sukinghan, at least come over. Jialuo made a decision quickly. He quietly followed behind Sukinghan. Not only did he not intend to take action, but he hid deeper. Sukinghan's life is not in danger now. Jialuo wants to take this opportunity to find out her situation, identify the murderer, and then kill her with one blow. Sukinghan. Jialuo carefully followed behind Sukinghan. The girl's condition seemed to be getting worse. At first, she was waving the two short knives very violently, but as time went on, Sukinghan seemed to be falling asleep and became increasingly weak. What was even more strange was that Sukinghan's eyes, which were originally open, gradually closed. However, without opening her eyes, she stopped bumping into the wall, but walked slower and slower. Chapter 79, Shu Yuking. As if the gears overlapped and fate was predetermined, Sukinghan, who was in a daze all the way, finally walked into the alley and fell to the ground silently, never got up again. Although Jialuo followed Sukinghan, he kept a certain distance. In the first few minutes when Sukinghan fell, Jialuo was not anxious, but waited at ease. However, after a few minutes, Jialuo still did not see the instigator of all this, but Sukinghan in the alley, and there was no sound. No. Jialuo gradually had a bad feeling in his heart. He rushed out from his hiding place and ran to the alley. The scene in front of him shocked him. Sukinghan lay quietly on the ground, as if she was sleeping soundly. There was no one around her, and there was no sharp weapon. However, invisibly, it seemed as if a sharp blade cut Sukinghan's body, and the scars tore through the skin and flesh, long and deep. Sukinghan. Jialuo was filled with remorse. He rushed to Sukinghan and threw himself on her, trying to block the sharp blade in the air. Unfortunately, this method was meaningless. Jialuo saw with his own eyes that a wound suddenly opened on his shoulder, and even his clothes were torn apart. However, Jialuo's clothes were clearly attached to Sukinghan's clothes, but his clothes were not damaged at all, just stained with blood. Ha! Jialuo hugged Sukinghan weakly and protected her with his body, but the scars that opened one by one seemed to mock his powerlessness. In Jialuo's arms, the sleeping girl was as quiet as a poem. Dozens of scars were all over her body, and the bright red blood kept overflowing, like a countdown to death. What happened? Jialuo covered Sukinghan's wound with trembling hands. The red blood stained his clothes and palms like ink. Jialuo tried to cover the wound, but the wound was too deep and too long. Although no bones were seen, a wound of this width and depth would basically be impossible to save if the bleeding was not stopped first and then sealed with needle and thread. And now, Luo had nothing in his hands. He could only hold Su Qinghan and watch her blood gradually drain away. He was here to save her, but Luo was powerless. There was nothing he could do, nothing he could do. The girl's blood was obviously warm, but in Luo's touch, it was terribly cold, as if it was piercingly cold, and as if it was burning. Su Qinghan, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Luo held the girl's palm, clenching it tightly, as if he wanted to hold her hand like this, to keep her, and not let death take her away. At this time, there were no new wounds on the girl's body, but such a bruised appearance had doomed Su Qinghan's death. In a trance, Luo suddenly felt the power of the grip back. He raised his hand incredulously, looking at the girl's knuckles in his palm, moving slightly. Su Qinghan. Luo turned his head, his eyes widened. As if she felt his gaze, the sleeping girl's eyelashes moved slightly, and slowly, opened her eyes. Because of the sequelae of the illusion and the influence of excessive blood loss, Su Qinghan's eyes only opened a little. In the haze, she saw Luo in front of her. Inexplicably, the girl smiled. Merry Christmas. Su Qinghan might not be able to tell whether what she saw now was an illusion or reality. She tried to open her eyes wide, but failed after all. Luo, it's such a sad dream. Su Qinghan's eyelashes trembled, and tears slid down the corners of the girl's eyes silently, and then, she closed her eyes, and leaned on Luo's chest with peace of mind. The world seemed to be quiet from then on. Luo sat on the ground, hugging the gradually cold girl, and every breath was as hard as pulling a bellows. Su Qinghan, I'm sorry, I failed again. Luo lowered his head, and leaned his cheek against the girl's cheek. He listened to her breathing, as if listening to the spring breeze blowing by his ears, which became smaller and smaller with the seasons. In the end, it drifted away like smoke and dust. Luo still couldn't keep her. What he did was natural, and she died the same way as before. It's not funny, nor sad, because life is like this. If you get it, you will always lose it. If you hold it tightly, it will also drift away. Luo felt that the girl's body was gradually getting cold. He sat on the ground in a daze. There was not much grief in his heart, but it was like someone had played a hole in it. It was terribly empty. It was so empty that you could hear an echo. No one can avoid paying a price. Luo whispered in the girl's ear, as if he was whispering. He took a deep breath, took off his shirt, put it under the girl's head, and then put her on the ground. Su Qinghan, no matter who it is, no matter where it is. Luo slowly stood up from the ground. Because he had been sitting for too long, his legs staggered, and he almost fell down. However, relying on his strength, Luo still stood up. I swear, I will find it. Really? That's great. Suddenly, a teasing voice sounded behind Luo. Luo turned his head abruptly, and what he saw was a girl with a very neutral appearance. And the black muzzle of the gun in her hand. Ding, ding, ding. The girl with the neutral appearance, without any nonsense or hesitation, pulled the trigger directly the moment Luo turned around and saw her face, and fired 3 shots in a row. The large caliber modified pistol, at a distance of only 4 or 5 meters, almost instantly penetrated Luo's chest. There was no room for reaction. The girl's shooting was very accurate, and none of the 3 shots missed. Luo's lower abdomen and chest were opened with 3 holes. He tried to clench his fists, but in the end he didn't use any strength. And then, the world was spinning, and Luo fell to the ground with a plop, and Su Qinghan, who had just died, was beside him. The bright red blood could not stop flowing out of Luo's body. Miraculously, it matched with Su Qinghan's blood. The khaki ground was dyed red and moistened. Everything was silent. I'm sorry, I'm used to being careful. The girl with the neutral appearance walked up to Luo without any regrets. She was obviously apologizing, but she smiled brightly. You like Su Qinghan very much, right? Look, I'll let you two die together. Not bad. What's your name? Luo felt the approach of death. His eyes were fixed on the girl's face, as if he wanted to remember her forever. Facing GLUO's questioning, the girl with the neutral appearance nodded happily, looking at GLUO without hesitation, as if accepting all his unwillingness and resentment. As for me, my name is Shuyuking, and I'm a good child who likes to linger in the past. Chapter 80, The Set Chess Game. 30:30 p.m. December 24th, 3005. Time marker 10016. The third round of retrospection. GLUO, like a wake-up call after the ringing of a bell. GLUO retrospected and escaped from death, but the remaining pain still made his palm tremble. And the kitchen knife fell directly to the ground. Shuyuking. GLUO leaned over and covered his heart, feeling as if he couldn't breathe. In addition to the first time Sukinghan stabbed his heart and died, this gunshot wound was the longest time GLUO died. The paralyzing pain eroded his nerves, and the despair of bleeding almost drove him crazy. It's time to go. GLUO didn't care about the kitchen knife on the ground, nor did he plan to wash his hands. He put on his coat and ran out of the door in a hurry. Now, Sukinghan was in danger. If he could go there 1 minute earlier, she would have a better chance of survival. GLUO took the shortest route, climbed over the wall of the community, and reached the road, where he could get a taxi. Not long after, GLUO got in a taxi, and he used money to clear the way. GLUO didn't care how much it would cost, he just wanted to get to the cemetery as soon as possible. Yes, this time, GLUO decided not to wait for Sukinghan, but to go directly to the cemetery to find Shuyuking. Until now, GLUO still didn't know what Shuyuking's innate ability was, but based on Sukinghan's performance, GLUO had a rough guess. The first thing is to pull people into the illusion and continuously carry out various illusion attacks. Then, once the mental power of the person being cast is exhausted, he will faint, and some of the originally false attacks will become reality and really appear on the victim. The working principle, the cost of use, the number of targets. GLUO didn't know any of these. He could only prepare for the worst. Since he didn't know how to remove Shuyuking's ability, he might as well kill her directly, so that Sukinghan would definitely be free from the illusion. But GLUO was really unsure about killing Shuyuking. At worst, I'll just die a few more times. GLUO leaned his head against the car window, looking at the scenery that kept passing by, his eyebrows aching slightly, and his mind was a little exhausted. This was already the third time he had returned from the dead, and it happened 3 times in such a short period of time. To be honest, GLUO didn't feel anything before, but now, he really felt the cost of going back. GLUO didn't know much about the soul, but he knew it must be very important. Every time return from death was activated, it consumed the power of the soul, and this consumption would increase with continuous retracing in a short period of time. It can be said that this is Sukinghan's biggest shackle. GLUO couldn't feel his soul, and he didn't know how much it would consume each time he returned from the dead, let alone how long it would take to fully restore the power of the soul. This unknown made GLUO feel broken and terrified, but facing Shuyuking, who had strange abilities, GLUO couldn't be stingy with death. It's time to consider the showdown with Sukinghan. She should know the most about the various matters of death return. GLUO certainly didn't want to show his hand to Sukinghan right away, but he needed to consider this possibility now. Not only was there the question of death return, but there were also Sukinghan's enemies, and Mu Yingluo's matter. GLUO certainly wanted to protect Sukinghan, and wanted to stand on her side, but GLUO had to confirm whether she was wrong. Even if Sukinghan did something that was not right, it was okay, but it must not be wrong. Otherwise GLUO would rather continue to be a third party and watch everything. And, my ability. GLUO looked at his palm, and clenched his fist silently. To be honest, GLUO really felt the limitations of his ability now. The most serious problem was that he could not control the return date. As long as he touched Sukinghan, he would automatically take away her superpowers, which would not only bring danger to Sukinghan, but also put GLUO in a passive position. For example, now, if GLUO saw Shuyuking, he could give up the death return that he had already taken, and pretend to be an ordinary person, walk up to Shuyuking and touch her. Then, the positions of the two people reversed instantly. It was easy for GLUO to kill her or imprison her. However, death return must stay in GLUO for 12 hours, which means that during these 12 hours, GLUO is no different from ordinary people when facing other revolvers. It's just, after death, there is some value. What should I do to break through the current realm? GLUO put down his palm, closed his eyes, and his thoughts were in a mess. To be honest, 6 or 7 years ago, GLUO had the same physical fitness as now. After so many years, GLUO has not become stronger at all. All he can feel is that his realm has been perfected. As long as he takes that step, he will reach a new realm. What a 0-level evolver becomes a 1st-level evolver, the level and the name don't matter. What GLUO wants to know is how to take this step forward. Only by improving the rank can you have the possibility of controlling your innate abilities. GLUO used to deal with ordinary people, and he could remain unchanged. But now, GLUO has mixed into the world of evolvers, and he must become stronger than anyone else. For himself, and for Sukinghan. What should I do? GLUO opened his eyes, and watched the taxi run through the red light and rush to the suburbs. He became more and more nervous. GLUO really didn't have a good way to solve the current situation. The situation has even changed from rescuing Sukinghan to how to kill Shuyuking. GLUO thought about Shuyuking's performance again and again in his mind, and mentally confirmed the previous experience again. The last time he recalled, he arrived at the spring cake shop at 5 o'clock, and then saw Sukinghan about 20 minutes later. The time when Sukinghan fell unconscious was about 5:40, and the last time Shuyuking appeared was about 6:10. Through the comparison of time, GLUO guessed that Shuyuking probably didn't leave the cemetery at the beginning. She should have completed the situation where Sukinghan was bound to die, and finally went there just to confirm whether she was dead. After all, with such a powerful ability, GLUO didn't believe that Shuyuking didn't have to do anything. The talent of the evolver is an equal exchange. With his own power, he distorts the rules of the world and obtains his own miracle. Energy consumption and effects are produced. This is a kind of transformation in itself. A method that can directly kill Sukinghan cannot be without cost. Normally, in order to maintain this illusion, Shuyuking should not be able to move at all. It may even be necessary to concentrate to maintain the illusion that traps Sukinghan. So, what I have to do now is find Shuyuking and then kill her before she reacts. Chapter 81, Nightmare Trial. In GLUO's anxiety, the taxi slowly stopped at the entrance of the cemetery. GLUO pushed the door and got out of the taxi. He took a deep breath and walked in steadily. Compared with the cemetery at night, the cemetery during the daytime is less gloomy and terrifying. The solemnity affect everyone who comes here to mourn. GLUO remembered the route clearly in his mind. His steps were not fast, just like other visitors. If it weren't for the tension that was hard to suppress, no one would have thought that GLUO was here to kill people. Rows of tombstones, names, a person from birth to eternal sleep, may experience decades of years of grinding, life and death. Everyone will eventually come here, but people always hope that more people will remember him. GLUO's footsteps were very light, so light that he seemed afraid of waking up the sleeping people. He drooped his eyelids, his eyes seemed to have no focus, and he was so scattered that he seemed to have lost his mind. However, all this was to get closer to the neutral girl, who was taking a nap with her eyes closed by the pine forest. Many people doubt whether people have spiritual power, but many times, invisible and intangible eyes can be felt by people. And this kind of spiritual induction is even more vivid in the evolvers. Not to mention the eyes. Even if you show a little killing intent next to him, he can clearly feel it. GLUO tried his best to hide himself. His eyes swept around to confirm that there was no one else watching, and his mind simulated the actions later. In fact, after seeing Shuyuking sleeping lightly with her eyes closed, GLUO knew that everything he guessed was correct. For Sukinghan, no matter if there was anyone around, GLUO would go over and kill her. In the last 10 meters, GLUO had already suppressed his breathing. His steps became lighter and lighter. He held the palm-length dagger in his hand and repeatedly simulated a fatal assassination in his mind. Until the last 5 meters, GLUO finally gave up hiding his killing intent, because at this distance, Shuyuking would definitely be able to sense his approach. All GLUO could do was to burst out all his speed and try to stab the dagger into Shu Yuking's neck. However, GLUO's plan to kill with one strike ultimately failed. Shu Yuking suddenly opened her eyes when the blade was half a meter away from her. There is no doubt that Shu Yuking, like Su Qinghan, is definitely one level higher than GLUO in the realm of evolvers, or even more. In a reaction time of 0.5 seconds or even shorter, Shu Yuking's body suddenly leaned back, allowing GLUO to burst out with all his strength and stab the tree trunk behind her. TSK. GLUO knew that his plan to attack had failed and everything would be in trouble. He gave up the dagger without hesitation and tried to get close to Shu Yuking and suppress her to death. However, GLUO miscalculated after all, and it can even be said that he miscalculated in an unimaginable way. Who are you? Shu Yuking leaned back to grab GLUO's fatal blow, and then the girl twisted her body and not only dodged to the side, but also stood up directly from the ground with the power of twisting her body. At the same time, Shu Yuking spread out her right hand and grabbed. The ground under GLUO's feet suddenly collapsed. GLUO dodged backwards and avoided the attack, but he also lost the opportunity to entangle Shu Yuking. It was not until this time that GLUO could see clearly what flew up from the ground. It was a huge sickle with a length of more than 1.7 meters, like the weapon of the god of death in the mythology. The sickle was pitch black and flashed with a gloomy breath. Sickle? GLUO looked at Shu Yuking's weapon and finally understood where the V-shaped notch on Su Qinghan's short knife came from. This god of death sickle was definitely not an ordinary item. It might even be related to the cause of Su Qinghan's death. You haven't seen it. This is a genuine silver level holy relic. Shu Yuking held the black sickle in her hand, and the smile on her face was extremely bright, but the murderous intent hidden in the smile also broke out extremely rapidly. Just when GLUO was distracted by the new term silver level holy relic, Shu Yuking had instantly left the place, and the sickle swept across like ink. The attack range of this large sickle is extremely large, and Shu Yuking's speed is too fast. Under the rank suppression, GLUO tried his best, but he just barely avoided the fate of being cut in half. However, his left shoulder was still cut open. Have you ever had a nightmare? Seeing that GLUO was hiding 4 or 5 meters away, Shu Yuking had no intention of chasing him. She put the sickle to her side and wiped her finger on the edge of the sickle. GLUO's blood on the sickle was wiped on Shu Yuking's hand. Experience it well. The price of interrupting my communication with my friends. Shu Yuking looked at GLUO with cold eyes, licked her tongue on her finger, and GLUO's blood entered her body. Nightmare trial. Shu Yuking raised the sickle and pointed it at GLUO. GLUO only felt a sudden pain in his brow, and everything in his thoughts disappeared. In a trance, GLUO raised his head, and suddenly Su Qinghan appeared in front of him. She stood in front of him, her cheeks tense with all the emotions, and the palm holding the dagger was trembling slightly. GLUO, I can't trust you, so I have to kill you. But, I promise, next time, I will make sure who you are, whether you need to be killed. You can scold me, you can hate me, I accept it. In the guilty whisper, Su Qinghan raised the blade and swung it down resolutely, so fierce that it seemed to leave scars in GLUO's eyes. GLUO looked at the dagger stabbing in front of him and reflexively wanted to do everything he could to survive, but unfortunately he had no other special means. He could only block his arms in front of him. However, the sharp knife light, when it was about to touch GLUO's body, instantly dissipated like a breeze, leaving nothing behind. It was not until this moment that GLUO suddenly remembered the situation in front of him. How could he be killed by Su Qinghan? He came to save her. Shu Yuking, this person must be killed. However, at this time, when GLUO raised his head again, Shu Yuking was no longer in front of him. Not only that, the cemetery that had been solemn and quiet before was suddenly shrouded in a mist, and the bright sky suddenly dimmed, as if the sun had set in the blink of an eye. Is this an illusion? GLUO finally knew what Su Qinghan was facing, and even why Su Qinghan marked the return path of death return at 4 points. GLUO also figured it out. At the first moment of entering the illusion, everyone will temporarily forget everything. What he has to face is the most terrifying scene in his memory. No matter who it is, he will reflexively use his strongest means to save his life. regardless of reason and thinking. What he faced at that time was despair and the pressure of death. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Tide of Monsters. Shuyuking's ability is not just to make people hallucinate. With the blessing of the Black Sickle, her innate ability may have an effect on people's souls. Once entering the illusion, there is no thinking and thoughts. The brain is completely empty. Facing the fear hidden in the heart, it is impossible to make any judgments. It can only act on instinct. Sukinghun was deceived in this way. He reflexively updated the backtracking mark, and GLUO, because he was powerless to stop it, suffered no loss. Is everything fake? GLUO recalled Sukinghun's state, and knew what he was facing now. At this moment, he was pulled into the illusion by Shuyuking, and in reality, he had not moved at all. The most terrifying thing is that at this moment, Shuyuking is next to him. If she wants to kill him, it may be a random knife. GLUO recalled his previous position, and began to move to the side. Although his consciousness was in the illusion, his consciousness was still connected to the real body. Any movement he makes will have an effect in both the illusion and reality, and for the time being, the touch of reality and illusion will also be transmitted to him at the same time. Bang! GLUO was clearly walking on the open space in the illusion, but he felt the touch of something. GLUO touched around, carefully avoided the obstruction of the tombstone, and tried to keep a distance. In GLUO's mind, Shuyuking didn't need to be as cautious as Sukinghun if she wanted to kill him. There was already a gap between the two, and GLUO would lose in a head-on battle. However, GLUO walked carefully for a long time, but didn't feel Shuyuking's next move. She wants to defeat me in the illusion? GLUO recalled the way Sukinghun died, and understood Shuyuking's plan a little. It is very likely that after Shuyuking used her innate ability, she couldn't simply cancel it. The whole ritual-like ability activation has a necessary process and result. Sukinghun was attacked by Shuyuking's ability and couldn't break free from the illusion, but in the same way, in order to maintain this illusion, Shuyuking couldn't move at all. Just now, he interrupted the process, and Shuyuking was forced to interrupt the ritual. Sukinghun must have recovered. But the same thing, GLUO became Shuyuking's next target, and he was trapped in the illusion. The final way of death might be the same as Sukinghun's before. Silent Hill? The mist rising around GLUO had already engulfed the cemetery with tombstones. GLUO vaguely heard a broken sound, like the sound of ants marching, amplified. It's all fake. It's all fake. GLUO took a deep breath, looked around, and didn't find anything that could be used as a weapon. Wait. In order to maintain this illusion, Shuyuking should also be sleeping. If I touch her, I will kill her. GLUO still remembered Shuyuking's last position, but after thinking about it, GLUO gave up this stupid plan. Shuyuking is not a fool. How could she reveal such a big flaw? Now, if GLUO wants to break the situation, he can only start from the illusion. Maintaining the illusion will definitely consume energy. Persist, persist. GLUO encouraged himself, and was extremely alert to the approaching group of monsters. Roar. In the fog, dense black monsters suddenly rushed out. These monsters still maintained their twisted willfulness, but they were on all fours, and some of them looked like licking, but they were covered with black shells, which made them look more gloomy and terrifying. There must be thousands of them. GLUO was really scared. Looking around, he was surrounded by these roaring monsters. The scene was much more terrifying than the biochemical crisis. It's all fake. It's all fake. GLUO was completely surrounded. He had no place to run, so GLUO simply stopped running and waited for them here. GLUO really couldn't find a weapon. He had no choice but to kick down a tombstone next to him and swing his hands up as a weapon. Snap, snap, snap. The stone tombstone was hard and heavy. GLUO's swing was not very fast, but the dense monsters rushed over completely, and there was no need to aim or predict. GLUO did not expect that the effect of his attack would be so good. These monsters seemed to be covered with shells, but in fact, They were just like balloons. Once they were knocked down by the stone tablet, they exploded with a snap and turned into a wisp of black smoke and dust, leaving nothing behind. GLUO directly rotated the tombstone on the spot. Hundreds of monsters rushed over fearlessly, turning into wisps of smoke and dust like falling rain, just like moths to a flame, fanatical and fearless. Is it just an illusion, and has no attack power at all? GLUO looked at the monsters that kept turning into smoke and dust, and he was a little suspicious of the other party's aggressiveness. When he saw Sukinghan before, he just waved his knife randomly in the air. Could it be he was the same? GLUO hesitated a little, so the movement of his hand paused for a while, and the speed of rotation was only a little slower, and a monster approached him and grabbed his back with one claw. Squeak. It was like the sound of water dripping on a hot pot. GLUO only felt a pain in his back, but it was not unbearable. It was a bit like the feeling of scratching an itch with too much force. As soon as GLUO received the damage, he immediately increased his strength. The monster that hurt him was instantly hit by the tombstone and turned into a wisp of smoke. As if they were encouraged, thousands of monsters began to rush towards GLUO more frantically. In the eyes of intensive phobia, the scene was simply wanting to kill people. It seems no big deal. GLUO's back injury actually only hurt a little at the beginning, and then it recovered quickly. After only a few seconds, it was as if nothing had happened. Really no attack power. GLUO hesitated in his heart, but decided to test it. After all, his strength was limited. How could he keep swinging such a big tombstone? Squeak. 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 GLUO just relaxed a little, and immediately a monster passed the line of defense and grabbed his back. GLUO deliberately controlled the number and felt the situation of the injury. The pain was not obvious, but it disappeared quickly, as if it would not cause any harm to GLUO. All of this was just an illusion. Why does it seem like a trap? GLUO swung the tombstone for a few minutes. Even though he was an evolver, he could not hold on even with hundreds of pounds of stuff. As GLUO's movements slowed down, the monster's attacks became more crazy. They seemed to have no life consciousness at all. All they wanted was to grab GLUO, and they didn't care whether he lived or died afterwards. Huh. Why am I? Chapter 83, Falling to the Bottom of the Sea. The monsters in GLUO's side kept dissipating like flying sparks. In order to maintain his offensive, he did not use up all his strength, so his back would occasionally be injured. As the number of injuries increased, GLUO gradually realized that the pain time when he was injured was getting longer. Although there was no wound from beginning to end, GLUO had already felt something was wrong. Just like boiling a frog in warm water, when he noticed the problem, it was too late. Why? I feel a little dizzy. GLUO's attack continued, but in a trance. His consciousness paused for a moment, his feet staggered, and he almost fell, but fortunately, he maintained his body shape. But, in the pause of a few seconds, dozens of claws had already swept over GLUO. Arsehole. GLUO didn't care about the consumption of strength. He held the tombstone with both hands and swung it violently, instantly clearing all the monsters around. At this time, GLUO finally discovered Shuyuking's real purpose. Now he is not confused by the illusion at all. To be precise, he is now in a soul state. The other party used some method to block the connection signal between his body and soul. It was not a complete stage, but the sense of vision and hearing was blocked very thoroughly. GLUO can still control his body now, but the illusion set by Shuyuking has become the most dangerous killing field. These monsters will not leave scars every time they attack, but will only weaken GLUO's soul. The damage each time is very low and does not affect the overall situation, but once the number of times is too many, GLUO will be close to death. GLUO said before that he did not feel his soul, but now, GLUO clearly perceives his weakness. The continuous time and space retracing has made his soul exhausted, and now it is constantly hurt. The situation is much worse than imagined. How should I get out? GLUO shook his head vigorously, trying to make himself more awake, but at this moment a sound like an earthquake is constantly approaching from a distance. GLUO's eyes were already obscured by the mist, but he could still see that the surging monsters were being separated, and a huge figure was rushing towards him. What's going on? GLUO swung the tombstone with all his strength, clearing a space around him. GLUO wanted to retreat, but he didn't expect that his body in reality would step on empty air. At that moment, GLUO only felt his body stumble, and the stone tablet in his hand was thrown out directly. In an instant, within a straight line of more than 10 meters, large swaths of monsters turned into smoke and dust. But GLUO had no weapons in his hands. He didn't care about the attacks on him, and hurriedly got up, trying to step on the surging monsters and run away. However, the huge figure was already approaching, and GLUO couldn't even dodge it, and was knocked out head-on. It was a huge rhinoceros beetle, a beetle with huge horns, more than 10 meters long. Half of its body was buried in the ground, and the only exposed part was larger than a tank. Ahem. GLUO flew in the air for nearly 2 or 3 seconds, and finally fell into the sea of monsters. Countless claws fell on GLUO, and the monsters completely enveloped GLUO like a tide. It must be said that, although the monsters did not cause much damage, the hideous faces were too terrifying. Being covered by such monsters, GLUO had no way to resist. He could only hold his head and face, curl up his body into a ball, and try to reduce the contact area. Countless claws swept over GLUO. At first, GLUO could still feel the pain, but after a minute or two, GLUO could no longer feel the pain, but began to feel tired and numb. Just like being given sleeping pills, GLUO gradually found it difficult to stay awake. He slowly closed his eyes, and the feeling of weightlessness in his body became stronger and stronger. That feeling was like falling into the deep sea. The light from the sky gradually disappeared. The whole world became cold. All the touch was covered by the feeling of liquid. The world in the hearing quickly became silent, and everything felt began to darken. The world is constantly falling. GLUO's remaining sanity has already understood the current situation. The power of his soul is being stolen, and the monsters are taking it away bit by bit. It won't be long before GLUO's soul will completely lose its power. Not to mention escaping from the illusion. He won't even have the possibility of waking up. The soul is shattered and then life is taken away. The worst thing is that what GLUO will have to endure is not the death of the body, but the extinction of the soul. After all, death return consumes the power of the soul to activate. Soon, GLUO will lose the ability to go back. Even if the body dies, death return will not be able to start. His death is already doomed. But fortunately, Sukinghan survived. His intrusion interrupted Shuyuking's ceremony. Sukinghan must have escaped, and after escaping, she will definitely run away, and run very far. Shuyuking, who uses blood as a medium to cast this illusion, must find her again, if she wants to harm Sukinghan. GLUO believes that after this near-death experience, Sukinghan will definitely be more careful and more secretive. Shuyuking should not think of finding Sukinghan easily. Even if she sees her again, Sukinghan will definitely prepare a way to deal with it. It's just a pity that he can't be with her. The cake shop is gone, and he will die here. Will Sukinghan be sad when he goes back? They clearly agreed to spend Christmas Eve together tonight. Will she be disappointed when she survives and returns home with the cake? He originally planned to make a big meal for her. The ingredients were all prepared. He just needed to put them in the pot so that she could taste his most serious craftsmanship. It's a pity that she can never taste it again. If she can't wait for him and the cake shop is gone, will she move to a more secluded place? In the future, will she investigate his whereabouts and then realize that he is dead? Will she be sad when she gets this news and finds GLUO dead in the cemetery? Will she guess that he died for her? Will she come back to collect his body and dig a deep grave? On this day every year, will she bring him carnations, just like commemorating those important friends? Too many doubts, too many regrets, filled GLUO's mind. However, at this moment, he was really tired, so tired that he didn't want to struggle for life anymore, but accepted the peace in front of him. Quietly, falling into the endless deep sea bed. The light in his sight had disappeared, and the extreme fatigue made GLUO close his eyes, and he didn't even want to open them. He didn't want to resist, and he couldn't resist. Death was like this. Sukinghan, I sincerely hope that we can meet later next time. Chapter 84, The Deepest Part of the Sea of Consciousness. GLUO felt that even his own existence began to fade. He seemed to be falling into a long sleep. His thoughts began to sluggish and his senses became more and more empty. At least, I have a clear conscience. GLUO had experienced too much disappointment and pain. He didn't really care much about his life. And now, he finally faced death. This was also a kind of relief. At least, he could feel at ease. GLUO completely gave up his feelings. He curled up his body and slowly fell into the endless darkness until the bottom of the deep sea. Even GLUO himself thought that he would be completely dead. However, when he sank to the bottom of the sea of consciousness, he suddenly seemed to have passed through a layer of barrier and continued to float down. Finally, he fell to the ground. Hey, stop pretending to be dead. You're not dead yet. Huh. In a trance, GLUO suddenly heard a proud voice. His eyelids moved, and he slowly opened his eyes. What he saw was a vast grassland with no horizon. The wind seemed to be singing a ballad and passed by his ears, warm and familiar. Where is this place? GLUO gradually woke up from his confusion. He raised his head and saw the endless night and the stars shining like chess pieces. This is the deepest part of GLUO's consciousness. It is not an endless chaos, but rather a manifestation of a certain time, a certain moment, and a certain place. It seems to be late at night. There is no human habitation or lights in the wilderness. Everything seems to be always silent, as if no one has ever been here. Looking from afar, the boundless darkness permeated the distance. The night was too dark and deep, vaguely indicating ominousness and despair. I seem to have seen it before. GLUO stood in the center of this world. He looked at the distant night. He could not see anything, but he suddenly felt that the scenery in front of him was very familiar. The stars are like the sea, and fate is like the tide, like a sigh in grief. The girl's voice sounded beside GLUO. GLUO turned his head and the expression on his face suddenly froze. The owner of the voice was a little girl who looked only 12 or 13 years old, but when GLUO saw her, he was sure that she was definitely not a human. Because what the girl showed was a kind of beauty that could not be described in words. Her appearance was no longer something that humans could form or modify. The kind of composition that transcended the medium of flesh and blood made the appearance of humans appear breathtakingly perfect. She was only about 1.5 meters tall, barefoot, and had no clothes or decorations, except a very shabby suspender skirt. But even with such simple clothes, the girl still has an indescribable deep beauty. Her lavender eyes are as deep as the vast sea. Her pink lips are seductive. Her long dark purple hair hangs down to her ankles, without a hairband. Her long black hair swings gently, and she is as beautiful as a dream. At this moment, the girl stood beside GLUO a few meters away, her expression calm and indifferent. There was no stain or dust on her body, and the shabby suspender skirt seemed to have become dull and shabby, only because it had gone through too long. Who are you? GLUO didn't know why he came here, so he quickly looked away after taking the first look at the girl. It's a pity to say that the girl's appearance is a state that a natural human individual cannot grow. If GLUO continues to stare at her, he will definitely be fascinated. Huh. GLUO, have you lost your memory? The girl was still wondering why GLUO acted so strange at first, but when she heard GLUO ask who she was, the girl finally got the answer. How could it be that you have forgotten everything? The girl obviously hated GLUO very much. When she found out about GLUO's miserable state, she not only did not sympathize with him, but laughed even more happily. You deserve it. You really deserve it. This is the fate of a stupid fool like you. What are you talking about? GLUO couldn't help it after all. He turned his head and looked the girl up and down, still with a confused look on his face. Where is this? Who is this person? All his memories were well preserved. He didn't lose his memory and remembered everything well. Where is this? Here. Don't you understand? Here is the deepest part of your sea of consciousness. The girl felt GLUO's distrust. Not only did she not feel troubled, but she laughed even more happily. My sea of consciousness, the deepest part? GLUO actually didn't understand what the sea of consciousness was, but according to what he saw in the novel, this should be the deep memory in his soul that constituted his personality, the bottom layer. Who are you? Why are you here? GLUO still had doubts about the girl's identity. Thinking of Shu Yuking's soul attack, GLUO even suspected that the girl in front of him might be part of the illusion and a means of attack. My name is Crossing Yan. The girl, who looked only 12 or 13 years old, only told GLUO her name. She seemed not to want to continue answering the remaining questions. Instead, she looked up at the sky. In the clear night, the stars that should have been messy seemed particularly orderly here, just like the circular light strips in the conference hall. Countless stars formed different constellations and surrounded the entire sky. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. The 12 zodiac signs were neatly and clearly arranged in the sky. Apart from these 12 constellations, there were no other vital stars. Why, there is not even a moon in the sky, only the 12 zodiac signs. At this time, GLUO finally noticed the abnormality in the sky. Such a clear sky, but there is no moon at all. What else could be possible? Why else? Because there is no moon. Crossing Yan's eyes were cast on GLUO. She looked only 12 or 13 years old, but her temperament was particularly mature and even gave people a kind of beauty that has gone through time. GLUO was increasingly unsure of why he appeared here. He turned his head and his eyes met Crossing Yan's, but all he saw was hatred and anger. Do you hate me? Have I offended you? Of course you. Crossing Yan seemed to have remembered something and was about to shout it out with gritted teeth, but in the end, she calmed down her anger and sighed for a long time. Forget it, you are like this, what else can I say to you? It's meaningless. What am I like? Why is it meaningless? GLUO certainly remembered his situation, but he wanted to try to find out more information from Crossing Yan. But what he didn't expect was that Crossing Yan didn't seem to be interested in talking about these things, but directly gave him a definition. GLUO, you are going to die. Otherwise, why would you appear here? Chapter 85, Crossing Yan, you idiot, you will only come here to take back your heavenly soul when you are about to die. Crossing Yan suddenly sighed, as if she was helpless about GLUO's stupidity. GLUO pondered her words, still confused. GLUO had heard that people have 3 souls and 7 spirits, among which the 3 souls are heavenly soul, earthly soul, and life soul. This seems to be a Taoist theory. How did it get mixed up with the evolvers? Forget it, just forget it. Forgetting your own stupidity and ignorance is not a kind of salvation. Crossing Yan shook her head, as if she didn't want to talk about it anymore. She looked at GLUO solemnly, as if she was giving him a choice. GLUO, in countless universes in time and space, there is a fundamental energy that affects everything, drives everything, and changes everything. We call it primordial energy. It does not have any bias or attributes. It can be regarded as a part of the evolution of the universe, and one of the factors that created time and space. But precisely because primordial energy does not have any attributes, it can also be integrated with the 12 major root element, showing a side with attributes, and becoming a new force, source energy. Crossing Yan seemed to be telling something ancient and long. Her voice was heavy, so heavy that it seemed enough to carry the birth and destruction of all living things, the formation and destruction of all stars. This world, your hometown called Earth, was once full of source energy in an unrecorded ancient era, but at a certain unobservable node, the source energy disappeared. I don't know the reason for the disappearance, but what can be confirmed is that without the support of the source energy, all the creatures of that era perished, and their civilization and their creations turned into dust. Then, after millions of years of rebirth and extinction, humans were born again, and began a new cycle of life. Because there is no source energy, you don't need to rely on this energy to survive, and because of this, you are weak. Crossing Yan stretched out her hand, and raised her index finger. A wisp of energy like smoke, fog, dust, and light gradually seeped out from the girl's fingertips. The dark purple mist lingered on the girl's fingertips, emitting fluctuations that shocked the soul. This is the source power. You mean, the source power is back? So, there are evolvers? GLUO obviously still had doubts about Crossing Yan's identity, but he listened to her words very seriously. After all, he had never heard of this knowledge, nor had he ever understood it. Yes, the source power is back. Its disappearance is the extinction of an era, and its return will also be the rebirth of an era. Crossing Yan did not move, but in a trance, the brilliant source power turned into a bud waiting to bloom, and then bloomed brilliantly. Very beautiful. Jialuo looked at Crossing Yan with envy. He couldn't even find the right words to describe the brilliant splendor of the source power. It was the most magnificent scenery and the most real color in the body of a living being. Those who can possess this power can indeed be called evolvers. GLUO, every life in the world has the adaptability of source force since its birth. After a long period of gestation and growth, their lives will develop fully, and their souls will take shape. And then, it depends on one's own abilities to complete the unification and integration of life, blood and spiritual soul, and to materialize one's own reality. Crossing Yan waved her hand lightly, and the flowers made of source force dissipated and turned into misty and gorgeous ribbons. The girl looked at him without stopping talking. That is the proof of the uniqueness of each life, the symbol of the continued existence of an individual, and the sum of all living beings. Its name is Origin Talent. Humans who have awakened the Origin Talent have entered the transformation stage of the life level transition. Their lifeblood and spiritual soul will continue to grow stronger. This growth usually lasts for 3 years, until the new life is completed, the source power is awakened, and they become realm warriors, meaning walkers of the realm of life. Of course, you can call them evolvers. Crossing Yan seemed to be waiting for GLUO to accept all this. She spoke very slowly, and GLUO listened very carefully. But as he listened, GLUO finally felt the strangeness in Crossing Yan's words. It was as if she was saying, she did not belong to this world, but also to humans. GLUO, you have awakened the original talent, and are now in the transformation stage. Logically speaking, you should have awakened the source power long ago, and officially entered a new realm of life. But GLUO, you haven't made any progress for many years, right? Yes. GLUO did not hide his problem, but his eyes were fixed on Crossing Yan, as if he wanted to see something from her face. This knowledge sounds like it doesn't matter, but in fact, it is extremely important basic knowledge for GLUO and the people in this world. It is the foundation, so it is more important. It can even be said that the entire future cultivation system and GLUO's understanding of the source energy will come from this. At this time, Crossing Yan said this so easily, which was obviously a statement, or a display of chips. She must be asking for something. From the first contact, GLUO could clearly feel that Crossing Yan hated him very much, or hated him, and she did not hide this hostility. But now, she put down her hatred, and gave these to GLUO. Obviously, she had something very important to ask of GLUO. GLUO, the birth of source power requires the promotion of life and soul. You have 1/3 of your soul here. How can you move towards the bronze bloodline? Crossing Yan suddenly smiled. She took light steps and slowly walked to GLUO's side. When GLUO didn't understand, Crossing Yan raised her hand. It seemed to touch GLUO's cheek. But at that moment, the invisible chain appeared instantly, locking Crossing Yan's finger 1 centimeter in front of GLUO's cheek. What is this? GLUO looked at Crossing Yan, who was bound by the chain, and couldn't help showing a look of shock on his face. The chain was a color like amethyst, and the material was neither gold nor jade. It was impossible to tell what it was made of. It was so long that GLUO couldn't see its edge at all, because one end of the chain was locked on Crossing Yan's body, and the other end locked directly to the sky. The 12 zodiac constellations arranged around the sky. Each constellation hung a chain, a total of 12 chains, locking Crossing Yan here. Left wrist, left elbow, left shoulder, right wrist, right elbow, right shoulder, left ankle, left knee, right ankle, right knee, neck, coccyx. Chapter 86, Crossing Yan, Part 2. What was even more terrifying was that these 12 chains were not linked to the shackles, but were directly fixed in Crossing Yan's bones, with 12 points embedded in the bones. GLUO couldn't imagine how much hatred she had, how much power she had, to let people lock her up in this way. The last bondage was different from the previous 12 chains. It was wrapped around Crossing Yan's body, and the two ends were connected together to form a complete closed loop. This was the seal used to lock crossing Yan. The 12 chains locked the sky, and the last one bound her body. Look, crossing Yan struggled to get closer to Gluo, but the 12 chains locked her bones tightly, making it impossible for her to move forward even 1 centimeter. 12 chains are enough. The last bondage is actually unnecessary. Take it back. Take it back. Gluo looked at the 13 chains on crossing Yan's body, and he didn't believe that he could affect this seal. In other words, Gluo couldn't figure out why crossing Yan, who was sealed like this, appeared in his sea of consciousness. Can I unseal you? Of course not. At this time, crossing Yan finally stopped trying to get close to Gluo. She took 2 steps back, and the 13 chains that emerged hid again. You can't unseal these 13 chains. Even if you break through the 4th silver stage, even if you reach the 6th gold stage, there is no chance at all. But you can unseal the 13th chain. This chain is not to seal me, but to restrict my activities. Or, you can call it, and take it back. After all, it is 1/3 of your soul. Crossing Yan stood in front of Gluo and suddenly showed a bitter smile. She looked at Gluo and shook her head silently. Weakness and ignorance are not obstacles to survival, but arrogance is. Crossing Yan. What do you mean? Gluo looked at crossing Yan's expression, which finally changed. He felt that the situation was a bit weird, but he couldn't think of what was wrong. Come on, repeat your bio oath. Let the long returned soul return to your body, so you can awaken the source power, enter the first bronze level, and gain the ability to control your original talent. Crossing Yan's small body seemed to contain vast power. She spread her hands, and the whole world trembled. The girl closed her eyes silently, and the 13th chain wrapped around her body appeared. Gluo actually didn't understand the situation, but in his heart, there was a voice telling him to touch the chain and let the long returned soul come back. At this moment, the chains on crossing Yan's body were also trembling, as if they wanted to say something to him excitedly, telling him something worth exciting. So, Gluo took a step forward, stretched out his right hand, and slowly placed his palm on the entangled chain. In a trance, Gluo heard a childish voice. He closed his eyes and listened attentively. The voice seemed to come from a long distance, a long time ago. Obviously, the voice was very light, but Gluo heard it clearly and understood it. He was repeating it. May the stars remain the same after thousands of years, and may the ancient ballads still echo on this land. May the hometown remain the same after thousands of years, and may my courage remain when my body decays. May the young children still exist after thousands of years, and may the sword be immortal with glory at that moment. Gluo slowly opened his eyes, his pupils flashed with dark purple light, and the gorgeous mist was frozen in them forever. Come back, your expedition is over. Gluo took a step back and waved his hand gently. The amethyst-like chain suddenly broke, flying in the air like a python, and instantly detached from crossing Yan's body. Then the chain soared in the air, getting smaller and smaller, losing more and more shape, and finally turned into a stream of light and drilled into Gluo's eyebrows. And Gluo did not have any earth-shaking changes himself, and he did not feel any strength or awakening. He just felt an inexplicable clarity. It was like waking up from a dream and suddenly realized, how can body attain fruition? Today I know that I'm me. Gluo did not solve any doubts, but he was very free and easy in his heart. Those unknown truths will be known one day, and he does not need to pursue them, because the pursuit is meaningless. One day, everything will come to light. Zingayan, what happened to you? But I think I should apologize to you. Gluo turned his head and looked at Zingayan solemnly, lowering his head and leaning forward slightly. I'm sorry. Whatever you want. Zingayan shook her head and did not want to talk more. After getting rid of the 13th chain, Zingayan's movements were finally unrestricted. She stretched her waist and her expression became excited. With her otherworldly appearance, as long as you see it, it will make people's hearts sway. You owe me much more than you think. What do you mean? Gluo felt that Zingayan had something to say, but at this time, Zingayan no longer needed him. The girl waved her hand, as if she wanted Gluo to leave quickly. Gluo, let me remind you a few last things. After a living creature awakens its original talent and goes through the metamorphosis stage, it will gain source power and become a realm warrior. Source power is born from life and manifests as the power of the soul. Its essence is the fusion of soul power and life power. The process of creating source power is to burn a living creature's life and soul at the same time, transforming, fusing, and sublimating. And source power will continue to nourish living creatures, allowing its life and soul to grow stronger and stronger. Stronger life and soul will produce more powerful source power. The two promote each other, spiral upward, and allow living creatures to reach a higher realm of life. Crossing Yan seemed very happy at this time. If what she said to GLUO before was an exchange, then now she was reminding GLUO lest he die so quickly. So, bronze level is just the beginning of evolution, the start of transcendence, and can only be regarded as an ordinary person with particularly strong physical attributes. As for the source power of a bronze level I warrior is scarce and weak, and can only circulate in the human internal organs and bones. The enhancement of warriors is extremely limited. It is nothing more than bones as hard as steel, and internal organs tougher, and the rest is not worthy of praise. So, even if you become a true evolver, you will still be afraid of swords and knives, and facing various guns and bombs. Except for the improvement of your reaction ability such as dodging and blocking, you will die if you just take it. Don't get arrogant, just think of yourself as a low-level martial artist, similar to a minion with internal power. Chapter 87, Vertical Pupils. Crossing Yan's tone of voice was somewhat teasing due to her resentment towards GLUO. The girl's face was full of pride, as if a weakling like GLUO could be killed with just one finger, and she didn't need to care at all. I'll remember that. GLUO didn't feel Crossing Yan's malice, but instead had an interesting feeling that this beautiful little girl seemed to be at some dear. Then, goodbye. Crossing Yan waved her hand, and GLUO suddenly felt his body lighten, like a balloon filled with hydrogen, and began to float upwards. Don't die so easily. I really don't want to see you again. Crossing Yan seemed to have remembered something, and stomped her feet with gritted teeth, but in the end she looked up at GLUO, and didn't bother him anymore. Anyway, your world is about to be destroyed, and it doesn't matter whether you take revenge or not. At that time, you will be desperate at this moment. GLUO, who was rising continuously, did not hear the girl's muttering after all. When he rose to the point where he could no longer see the girl, GLUO felt the strangeness of crossing the barrier again. Then, he returned to the bottom of the dark sea of consciousness. However, unlike before, GLUO no longer fell, but began to rise slowly, and as time went by, it became faster and faster. Just like floating up in the deep sea, GLUO once again felt the hazy light, and the lost consciousness returned to GLUO, making him slowly feel the world, until wake up again. In a daze, GLUO suddenly opened his eyes, and at this time, the ugly monsters he had seen before were just some light smoke in his eyes. It was a wisp of white smoke with black, without even the lowest form. They just entangled GLUO, like mosquitoes sucking blood, constantly extracting power from GLUO's soul. However, GLUO at this moment was different. It's just a dream. GLUO waved his hand casually, and the invisible wind swung around him. The ghostly smoke was instantly swept up, and carried by the wind to spread far away. So, the wind suddenly rose, and the clouds and smoke followed. The spiral storm blew around GLUO, and then continued to spread and expand. Countless smoke-colored ghosts, without even the most basic resistance, were instantly engulfed, and became the driving force of the spread. The cemetery wrapped in fog gradually revealed its original appearance, and the sky with the setting sun slowly brightened. At this moment, the huge rhinoceros beetle that had appeared in GLUO's eyes before also revealed its original appearance. How is it possible? Shu Yuking held a huge sickle in her hand, and looked at GLUO who stood up again, feeling incredible. Since getting this silver level holy relic, no one has ever escaped from her hands. Killing someone is just a ritual. Even if this point is excluded, in any aspect, her power crushes GLUO, but at this moment, for some reason, she was actually terrified when she saw GLUO at this moment. Obviously, his soul is so fragile that it is about to dissipate. Why did he suddenly become so terrifying? Where did he get the strength? And a soul of this strength? You must be kidding me. Shuyuking is also in the soul state now. Her innate ability is also specialized in the soul. Logically speaking, in front of her, GLUO is just a bigger bug. But now, this dying bug has turned into a man-eating dragon. Shuyuking. GLUO didn't know how to describe himself at this moment. Obviously, Shuyuking and he are both ordinary humanoids, but now, GLUO feels that Shuyuking is like a noisy fly. If you want to kill her, you only need to touch her lightly. Are you ready to die? Who are you? Shuyuking licked her lips and felt that her soul was trembling. In her sight, the boy seemed to have never changed. However, at this moment, between his pupils, there was a star purple color, and the original round pupils of primates also turned into snake-like vertical pupils. Are you really human? Shuyuking tightly clenched the sickle in her hand. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Now it's the battlefield of the soul. She still has weapons. This is an overwhelming advantage. No one can beat her. Impossible. There is a human who can beat her. Of course, I have always been a human. GLUO showed a happy smile on his face. He slowly clenched his right fist, and then, he suddenly hammered it into the ground. Dang. Like a morning bell and an evening drum, a huge shock spread from GLUO's fist. The whole illusion began to tremble. Shuyuking seemed to have been hit hard, and her face turned pale in an instant. No. Shuyuking had never felt the bed of her soul so clearly. GLUO's simple punch was like a mountain crashing into her illusion. Catcher. The sound of sparse cracks rang out on the black sickle in Shuyuking's hand. Shuyuking looked at the weapon in horror, but found that it was breaking. Just like specially made tempered glass, if it is broken a little, it will be broken as a whole. The silver level holy relic was shattered into gravel in Shuyuking's hands, and then, it was blown away by the wind. It's over. GLUO stood up again, clenched his fist, stepped forward suddenly, and disappeared instantly like a bullet. And then, Shuyuking stared in disbelief. She lowered her head, and looked at GLUO's fist hitting her chest, her lips trembling twice. You monster. Shuyuking didn't even feel the trajectory of GLUO's movement. She took a step back, then slowly sat down, and then, slowly lay down. If it weren't in the soul world, I couldn't beat you. GLUO sighed, and didn't say anything bad. He could feel that Shuyuking's soul had been shattered by his previous blow, and she couldn't live anymore. There are no ifs. I'm already used to the feeling of winning here. Shuyuking's abdomen did not bleed or have wounds. Instead, the cracks were filled up like broken glass. She looked up, and her face seemed to want to smile, but because of the injuries on her body, it turned into pain. I killed 35 people here. Every soul that died here made me stronger. I was just retribution. Shuyuking slowly closed her eyes, as if she recalled something painful. She frowned and slowly clenched her fists. If you know Suking-han, I hope you can treat her well. She lives too stubbornly, so she is so sad. Shuyuking seemed to want to say more, but she couldn't hold on any longer. The cracks spreading from her chest became bigger and bigger, and spread all over her body in almost the blink of an eye. Goodbye. Chapter 88. Pure Love God of War. Goodbye. GLUO and Shuyuking, in fact, did not talk much, but because of Suking-han, the two had a small intersection. If possible, GLUO actually wanted to talk to Shuyuking. He wanted to know some stories about Suking-han's past, and be prepared to deal with danger. However, Shuyuking was too threatening after all, and GLUO did not dare to hold back, so he could only kill her with one blow. Like drifting smoke, Shuyuking's soul dissipated in the illusion. Then, the fog dissipated, and GLUO returned to reality again. Fortunately, no one was watching. GLUO looked around, and did not find other people, otherwise his series of actions just now would make people laugh. In the distance, Shuyuking leaned against a pine tree, and fell into a deep sleep. GLUO walked over, and felt Shuyuking's breath. The girl was still alive. Of course, this was only the body alive. Shuyuking had lost her soul, and she could not wake up again. Unless, there were other souls invading her body and resurrecting. Otherwise, Shuyuking would die soon like a flower without roots. This process may take a day, a week, or a month. All things have spirits, the body is hardware, the soul is software, without the soul, life is just an empty shell. Rest in peace. Guo looked at the sleeping girl, did not disturb her, just simply treated the wound on his shoulder, and turned to leave the cemetery. Everything, so far, it's peaceful. No one died in the cemetery, only a girl who was sleeping, and couldn't wake up. She was not injured or poisoned, and the police force in the outside world would not get involved. As for Zinky biopharmaceuticals, Sukinghan would definitely deal with it and take precautions. After leaving the cemetery, Guo stopped a taxi on the street. He sat in the back seat and finally no longer needed to rush on the road anxiously. Do you want to make a call? Guo held the phone, looked at Sukinghan's phone number, and tried to press it several times. But in the end, Guo still didn't make the call. Without Shuyuking, Sukinghan would definitely be able to take care of himself, and he didn't have to worry about it. At worst, he would not be able to see Sukinghan before 1 o'clock, and he would die again. Shuyuking, she should have come here alone. Guo leaned back in his chair, recalling his experiences during this period of time, and many doubts were solved. Since Sukinghan came to visit the grave, she must have had other backup plans to deal with the siege of Zinky biopharmaceuticals. However, Sukinghan never expected that the only person who really came to see her was Shuyuking, and her big scenes were completely useless. Moreover, according to the time when Sukinghan arrived at the cemetery and the time of his death, Sukinghan actually talked to Shuyuking for a long time. The two must have known each other, but Guo didn't know what they talked about. What can be imagined is that they broke down and fought. Before Shuyuking died, she still missed Sukinghan very much. Guo could see that she was not false, but really hoped that Guo could take care of Sukinghan. What is the relationship between them? At this time, Guo suddenly remembered the photo in Sukinghan's mobile phone. Unfortunately, this time, he couldn't copy the photo to his mobile phone. He could only hope for a chance in the future. 33 people. Guo couldn't remember everyone's face, but Guo's intuition told him that Shuyuking must be among them. So, what happened in Sukinghan's past? Before the last time he went back, Guo saw Sukinghan die in a fantasy. At that time, she shouted 2 words that impressed Guo. Shuyuking. Aunt Lee is dead. She can't come back. We can't live in the past. We must get out. Shuyuking, let it go. Everyone has grown up and can't be trapped in a vow. Aunt Lee, everyone, vow? Guo slowly closed his eyes, thinking about the results of this series of strings, but in the end, because of too little information, he couldn't get anything useful. Forget it. Don't think about it. Sukinghan is fine. Guo tapped his knuckles on his thighs lightly and was quite proud of what he had done. No matter what, he finally saved Sukinghan, and that was enough. Enough to repay all the efforts. There will be more troubles in the future. Guo thought about what he had to do next and scratched his hair in annoyance. The first was the problem of the cake shop being demolished. Mengwu, that guy, would never give in easily without being beaten up. But if he wanted to defeat Mengwu, the consequences of the trouble would be no better than now. Guo actually had Kao Jianyan in his hand, but he didn't know how to play this idle chess move for the time being. Guo's goal was very simple, to make Mengwu compensate the cake shop, and then never come to harass him again, and all the previous things would be written off. But the problem was that the demolition of the old street was a big deal that everyone was coveting. How could Mengwu give up easily? And even if he gave up, there might be others. The troubles came one after another. Guo still hadn't forgotten that when Sukinghan invited him to a hot pot restaurant for dinner, he beat him half to death, and the other party's revenge would definitely come sooner or later. With the previous experience, Guo no longer dared to be unprepared. In the past, the plan that only cared about the present was very good, but it left hidden dangers. These two things must be solved well, otherwise Guo's peaceful life will not last for a few days. I'm so tired. Guo is now exhausted physically and mentally. The injury on his shoulder is still aching, and there is no medicine now. He can only go home to deal with it properly. And he must hide it from Sukinghan and not let her find out. Oh, he risked his life to protect her, but he could only hide everything silently and not let her know. What kind of spirit is this? This is the ultimate dog licking spirit rarely seen in the world. Lick to the end, and you will have everything you want. GLUO is still quite confident in himself. He is not ugly in appearance, and he is willing to spend money. The most important thing is that he has a sincere heart. Why can't he lick Sukinghan? By the way, the meal is not ready yet. GLUO suddenly remembered that the big meal he promised to Sukinghan was not ready yet. He hurriedly urged the taxi driver and gave him an extra 100 yuan to ask him to go faster. Most of the ingredients had been prepared, except for the frying. It's not even 6 o'clock yet, so if we hurry, we can get home a little after 7. It should take another hour to prepare the meal, so it's just right to start eating around 8:30. GLUO estimated that, even if Sukinghan escaped from danger, she would definitely have to deal with some things. If she brought a cake, she would be home around this time. It should snow around 7 o'clock, so I can ask Sukinghan out to see the snow and the fireworks. It would be the best reward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, Peaceful Christmas Eve. 2016. On December 24th, 3005, the night was as dark as ink, and the flying snowflakes were mixed with a chill. The buildings in the distance were brightly lit, and wisps of fireworks rose into the sky, exploding with brilliant sounds. Sukinghan stood downstairs of the old building, exhaled a breath of hot air between her palms, then changed her hands to hold the newly made cake, and slightly moved her fingers that were not too bloody. Finally, I'm back. Sukinghan didn't know why. She was just going home, like she did in the past, but she felt an indescribable nervousness in her heart. The girl stomped her feet at the entrance of the corridor and climbed the stairs step by step. Unlike usual, Sukinghan deliberately increased her steps, and the muffled sound echoed in the corridor. In front of the familiar door, Sukinghan hesitated for a moment, looked back at her own door, and wanted to go home first, but also wanted to knock on the door directly. Click. However, Sukinghan's hesitation did not get an answer. The sound of the door unlocking rang out. GLUO looked up at Sukinghan, who was covered in snow, and suddenly smiled brightly. You're back, I was waiting for you. Yeah. Sukinghan had clearly entered this room before, but this time, she felt a little awkward. She nodded gently, and was about to stamp her feet again, but GLUO pulled her into the room directly. I was wondering why you didn't come back yet. You said you would be back later, so I called you. Something happened and delayed me a little. Sukinghan took off the hood of her clothes and was about to pat it with her hand, but she didn't expect GLUO to come over with a towel and wipe the snow off her clothes. What's the matter? Is it serious? Are you okay? No big deal. Sukinghan stood there a little stiffly, letting GLUO wipe the snow off her body. Then she unzipped her clothes, handed them to GLUO, and watched him hang them up. It's really not a big deal. Yeah. Sukinghan knew that GLUO didn't quite believe her words. The young man leaned over and looked at her seriously. Sukinghan pursed her lips and forced a smile. Don't worry, I've solved it. It smells so good. What did you do? Haha, taste my cooking skills. I made a lot of specialties. GLUO looked at Sukinghan with a beaming eyebrow. He had been waiting for this moment. He pulled out a stool for Sukinghan. After watching her sit down, GLUO ran into the kitchen and started to serve the dishes. Sukinghan sat on the chair a little uncomfortably, her hands tugging at her collar. She looked around the room and didn't find any changes. However, for some reason, when she sat here again, her mood changed. Is it because I escaped from death today? Sukinghan recalled what happened today and couldn't help but feel scared. She was really wrong. Because she was used to living a peaceful life, she actually relaxed her vigilance. Because the person she met was Shuyuking, and she was the only one, she misjudged the situation and actually tried to pull the other party to her side. But after failing, she was controlled by someone, and all the countermeasures she had prepared were ineffective. Sukinghan, what do you want to drink? A beverage or wine? Black tea will do, the kind with carbonic acid. Sukinghan looked at the busy GLUO and wanted to help him, but was pushed back to his seat by GLUO. You've been busy all day today, and I've been crazy lazy at home, so you can just be a little princess. GLUO's smile was very bright. He did not hide his affection for Sukinghan, but in this close consciousness, GLUO always kept a distance and never gave Sukinghan a feeling of coercion. Yeah. Sukinghan did not refute GLUO's kindness. She sat on the chair, watching GLUO's back as he walked into the kitchen, and suddenly felt a warmth in her heart. GLUO is really a very good person. His kindness to her was always open and natural, with the frankness of friends and the help of neighbors. He did not rashly confess his feelings and tear up the relationship between the two. He just naturally confided his feelings to her. I am so fragile. Sukinghan knew that her emotions were not right, but she could not help it. The uncontrollable emotions overflowed. The reason, of course, was not the fear of death. She had died too many times, and she could even say that she was used to it. However, today, she recalled the deepest fear in her heart again. The night that was constantly entangled like a nightmare once again appeared in front of her in an extremely real way. Despair, pain, helplessness, coldness, struggle. So many years have passed, but the emotions in her heart are the same as they were back then. Sukinghan, what's wrong? The dishes are ready. Oh, sorry, I was distracted. Sukinghan was called back to her mind by GLUO. GLUO smiled and nodded, and began to introduce each dish on the table to her, and also picked up 2 pieces of fried beef that he was best at. Sukinghan actually had no appetite, but in the face of GLUO's kindness, she did not refuse after all. The girl ate slowly, but her eyes could not help but turn to GLUO's face. Look at you, you are so thin, eat more meat and shrimp. GLUO was not too enthusiastic, but he still picked up some of his specialties for Sukinghan. Of course, he could feel Sukinghan's gaze, but he did not show any abnormality, still the same as before. Well, thank you. Sukinghan took the chopsticks and ate the food carefully. In her eyes, the expression on GLUO's face was indescribable. Warmth. It was not the kind of attentiveness of a dog to a goddess, nor was it the pampering of a boyfriend to his girlfriend. GLUO's attitude towards Sukinghan was like they were a family, sitting here naturally and normally, eating a meal that could become a daily routine. Sukinghan, how is it? Is it delicious? Delicious. Sukinghan nodded and couldn't help but lowered her head. She was not afraid to look at GLUO, she was afraid that he would find the tears in her eyes. She had no family since she could remember, but today, with a person she had known for more than a month, Sukinghan felt the feeling of home again. Outside the window, goose feather-like snowflakes fell, the sound of fireworks exploded from time to time, the flashing colorful lights connected into one, and the lights outside looked bright and warm. But at the same time, Sukinghan also felt that the light where she was now was equally warm. Is this all you want to eat? Do you want to eat more? I've eaten a lot. Enough. Sukinghan had no appetite at first, but unknowingly, at GLUO's request, she actually ate more than usual. On the table, there was still a small half of the sumptuous dishes left. Sukinghan didn't expect that GLUO actually cooked so many dishes. I'm afraid he has noticed that she eats a lot, but he is just a little embarrassed in front of him. Okay, the dinner is over, and the next thing is dessert. I've been looking forward to your big cake. Chapter 90, Gift. Because I'm afraid you don't like cream, I specially asked him to add more fruit. Sukinghan put the huge 20-inch cake on the table. After opening it, GLUO was shocked for a whole year. This must be very expensive. GLUO really felt that this cake didn't look like a cake for 2 people on Christmas Eve, but more like a large birthday party or an engagement cake. It was too gorgeous and too thoughtful. How much money did this cake shop have to make? He worked so hard. It's okay, I want to eat it too. Sukinghan took out the cake cutter and handed it to GLUO, asking him to cut it. I like cutting cake the most. GLUO cut the cake very happily, but after the first cut, GLUO's movement suddenly froze. Sukinghan, it's a bit of a loss to cut such a big cake directly. Don't you put candles on it and make a wish? It's not a birthday, no need. Sukinghan shook his head, looked at Gluo with a regretful face, and couldn't help but smile. The boy in front of him is really a very warm person. In other words, when facing the person he likes, he can always give enough tolerance and distance, not getting too close to become entangled, nor too distant to make people feel uneasy. In fact, it was just two people, and Sukinghan really didn't need to buy such a big cake. And the reason why she bought such a big and gorgeous cake was actually selfish. Sukinghan wanted to let this night and this huge cake become Gluo's memory, a very deep memory. Just like her, she will remember this warm night for a lifetime. So, Sukinghan also hopes that Gluo can also remember today and the present like her. Then, when they separate, after several years or decades, he still remembers that on this snowy Christmas Eve, he and a girl who hurriedly parted, cut a huge cake together. For you, the biggest strawberry. Gluo chose the best piece for Sukinghan. He cut it very carefully, and the cross section was as smooth as a mirror. Thank you. In Sukinghan's eyes, Gluo's eyes were sparkling, as if they were full of hope and warmth. It tastes good. Sukinghan took a bite of the cake, and nodded with satisfaction. Her eyes felt a little sour and tears were faintly visible. In one's life, one will encounter many things and many people. But the ones who are truly compatible with you, and can really make you feel warm may be few and far between, or even unique. But the sad thing is, that life is always beyond one's control. Those important things that you want to have in your hands always inexplicably drift away in the wind, and can never be seen again. Delicious. Gluo is worthy of being a boy. He has obviously eaten a lot just now, but at this time, he still has a great appetite. Sukinghan only ate half of the cake, and put it on the table. He had no appetite, but Gluo ate up a large piece of his own, and was still eyeing the remaining half of Sukinghan. Gluo, can you still eat? My half is wasted, you should eat it too. You can eat it, don't waste it. Gluo happily took Sukinghan's plate, and ate half a piece of cake bit by bit. Sukinghan sat opposite him, and moved his stool awkwardly, wanting to take out his phone, but he didn't look at it rudely. Sukinghan, do you want to go out for a walk later? Go out for a walk. It's snowing heavily. Sukinghan turned his head, and looked out the window. The snow was falling heavily. In just 2 or 3 hours, it had piled up half a palm deep. Just go out, and see if it snows. You can build a snowman. Okay. Sukinghan hesitated for a moment, but faced with Gluo's expectant expression, he still didn't refuse him. Perfect. Gluo seemed to be burning after getting Sukinghan's answer. He ate the remaining cake in 2 or 3 bites, and then rubbed his back with satisfaction. Sukinghan, wait a minute. I'll go find some thicker clothes. Okay. Sukinghan stood up from the chair, and looked at the messy table. After hesitating for a moment, she rolled up her sleeves, and put the used dishes in the kitchen. Because she didn't know how Gluo would deal with the leftovers, Sukinghan didn't make her own decision. She just cleaned up the garbage on the table, emptied the empty plates, and washed the dishes together with the previously soaked dishes. In the bedroom, Gluo was surprisingly slow to change clothes. He hurried out after Sukinghan had finished cleaning. I didn't find the scarf, so I wasted some time. It's okay, just in time. Sukinghan washed her hands, put on her coat and shoes, and just as she was about to push the door, Gluo suddenly came over and put a scarf on her. You're wearing thin clothes, don't get cold. Thank you. Sukinghan grabbed the scarf with her hand, and the words of refusal were on her lips, but she didn't say them after all. You're welcome. Gluo didn't show any abnormality. He changed his shoes happily, and walked out of the house first, more active than Sukinghan, the guest. Did you bring your keys? Ah. Keys? Gluo was obviously too excited, and forgot about going home. He searched in his clothes, but couldn't find them. Luckily, I really didn't bring them. Gluo didn't change his shoes either. He ran into the living room to look for them, and found the keys. I admire you. Sukinghan shook his head helplessly. Gluo came out of the house, and closed the door forcefully. Let's go. Gluo waved his hand, and ran downstairs like a captain announcing the departure. Sukinghan followed behind Gluo, not in a hurry, but his steps were obviously faster than usual. Outside the building, the world was white. Snowflakes were scattered all over the sky, and brilliant fireworks were rising and blooming between the buildings. The dim street lights cast a dim light, making the snow glitter and sparkle everywhere. Sukinghan, I will never forget everything that happened today. GLUO, like a big kid, made a move of an airplane taking off, turned around in the snow, and finally ran to Sukinghan again. Me too. Sukinghan raised his head, his face full of reluctance. GLUO exhaled a breath of white air, rummaged in his pocket, and took out a gift box. Sukinghan, Merry Christmas Eve and Christmas. Ah, I forgot to buy you a gift. Sukinghan had originally thought about buying a gift for GLUO, but too many things happened today, and she was already in a hurry to buy a cake, so how could she remember about the gift? No, you've already given me a gift. Spending this holiday with me makes me happier than any other gift. I'll never forget it. Sukinghan looked at GLUO with shining eyes, pursed her lips, and nodded vigorously. Then she took GLUO's gift, and opened the box under his expectant gaze. In the snowy world, the moonlight seemed to flow between the extremely exquisite crystal pendants. Chapter 91, Half a Bucket of Water. Do you like it? GLUO had never given a girl a gift before. He spent a long time looking around before choosing it. He hoped that it would not be a failure for him to give a gift for the first time. I like it very much. Sukinghan nodded gently. She took the pendant out of the box and looked at the glittering gift. She was silent all of a sudden. Sukinghan, I'll put it on you, okay? GLUO was actually very hesitant about whether to bring up this idea, but he couldn't help looking at Sukinghan, who was silent. If you don't want to take it right away, it's okay. After all, it's so cold. You can go back Anne. Okay, thank you for your trouble. Sukinghan's attitude was unexpectedly frank. She handed the pendant to GLUO, took off her scarf, and took off her hat. Under Sukinghan's gaze, GLUO carefully untied the pendant. He had just cut his nails today, and he was still a little nervous. It took him a long time to untie the buckle. Why are you so nervous? Sukinghan took 2 steps forward. The distance between her and GLUO was closer than ever before. GLUO looked at the girl's bright smile and couldn't help holding his breath. In the falling snow, Sukinghan, who had always been cold, suddenly became gentle. She had a smile on her face, her eyelids slightly lowered, and her long eyelashes trembled nervously. At such a close distance, GLUO could clearly see the girl's face without makeup. Obviously, there was no makeup to cover it up, but there was no flaw in the girl's fair and rosy skin. Sukinghan was about 1.7 meters tall, only a head shorter than GLUO. At this distance, GLUO only needed to lower his head slightly, and the girl would raise her head slightly, and GLUO could kiss her cherry lips. Unfortunately, GLUO didn't have the courage. He could only look at Sukinghan, looking at the girl's eyebrows like willows, her clear and deep eyes, and her delicate facial features like sculptures. The soft and straight long hair was scattered behind the girl. Because it was trimmed recently, it only fell to half of her back. The girl seemed a little shy. The jade-colored earlobes were tinged with light pink, which was hazy between the hair. The indifference and indifference of the past faded away, and the independent temperament of the girl also disappeared inexplicably. At this moment, she was like a girl next door, standing in front of GLUO. Just a hug was enough to rub her into his body. Of course. GLUO's dangerous idea was just to hang a pendant. If GLUO dared to do it, he would be beaten into a pig's head. More seriously, it would be life-threatening. GLUO felt like he was repairing some precision equipment. He carefully put the pendant around the girl's neck and buckled the lock with all his strength, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Because the distance was very close, GLUO could smell the very good fragrance on the girl. Because he was too nervous, GLUO even had a thin layer of sweat. Is the buckle so difficult to buckle? Sukinghan was actually very nervous. She felt like she was spending a long time in those few seconds. After putting on the pendant, the girl hurriedly took a step back and distanced herself from GLUO. It's really a bit difficult. GLUO certainly couldn't tell his true situation. In order to suppress the power of LSP, he spent all his willpower and now felt his legs shaking a little. Do you really like this pendant? I really like it. Sukinghan stuffed the pendant into his collar and nodded very affirmatively. GLUO blinked his eyes, and the joy in his heart surged like a tide. Sukinghan, can we spend Christmas Eve together again next year? Next year? Sukinghan moved her lips hesitantly. In fact, as long as she wanted, she could easily get away with it, or directly deceive GLUO. However, at this moment, Sukinghan wanted to give her true answer. I don't know. If conditions permit, and if you still want it next year, I'm willing to live with you. Yeah. GLUO could naturally hear the hidden thoughts in Sukinghan's words. But he felt that he was satisfied with this answer, so he stopped asking. Sukinghan must have felt that they were not from the same world, and it was only a matter of time before they separated, so he was unwilling to agree to anything. In other words, the more Sukinghan liked him, the more he would push him away. After all, the world of the evolvers was too dangerous. If GLUO was really just an ordinary person, he would be dead if he rushed in. So, at this moment, GLUO didn't want to embarrass Sukinghan, and he didn't need her to solemnly promise anything. He just needed to understand her intentions. After several death retracings, GLUO fully felt the fear of losing Sukinghan, especially when he saw her body and watched her die in his arms. Really, it was more painful than dying once. GLUO could hold his chest high and say without hesitation that he really liked Sukinghan. Although it might not be love, he really liked her very much. Sukinghan is the first girl who has moved his heart in all these years. GLUO is not sure about Sukinghan's feelings towards GLUO, but he feels that they are more than friends, but less than lovers. To say they are less than friends may be a bit of an exaggeration, but a half-hearted lover is an objective description. Anyway, no matter what, it is certain that Sukinghan has a good impression of GLUO. That's enough. Sukinghan, do you want to go for a walk on North Street? Okay. Sukinghan certainly would not refuse GLUO. She walked beside GLUO, keeping a unified pace, turning the footprints in the snow into two long parallel lines. I don't know if it's because of the snow. There are very few cars on the street, but there are a lot more people strolling around, most of whom are couples. GLUO and Sukinghan walked among them without feeling awkward. The lights on North Street extended all the way, and under the rising fireworks, the white world was dyed with a layer of splendor. In the square where the crowds of people intersected, GLUO and Sukinghan were shoulder to shoulder. GLUO looked at the couples around him taking pictures, and said something a little shyly. Sukinghan was stunned for a moment, and actually nodded in agreement. Only one photo is allowed. Okay. GLUO's excitement was beyond words. He carefully adjusted his phone and took a photo with Sukinghan standing next to him for the first time. After taking the photo, GLUO suddenly saw someone eating candied haws again, so he ran over and asked where the candied haws were sold. He pulled Sukinghan's sleeve and ran all the way to the store. Slow down, why are you in such a hurry? There are so many people today, I'm afraid they will sell out. GLUO laughed innocently and didn't tell Sukinghan the truth. In fact, he just wanted to pull her and run wildly once. Sukinghan, it's past 12 o'clock. Merry Christmas. Yes, Merry Christmas. Chapter 92, Bronze Level. 2:05 AM, December 25th, 3005. Click. After the crisp sound of unlocking, GLUO pushed the door open and walked into the house. He kicked off his shoes first, then put on his slippers and put the things he bought while shopping on the table. Is this the reward for saving? I love you. GLUO was sure that Sukinghan didn't know everything he had done. The reason why she liked him more was probably because there was a family feeling between him and her. No matter how passionate a love is, it will gradually cool down after being together for a long time. After two people spend a long time together, they actually feel like family members in the end. Ah. Really, it's really great. GLUO sat on the chair and couldn't help but smile foolishly. I don't know if it was the power of love. GLUO felt unexpectedly energetic and full of strength. There was even a feeling of fullness. It was as if the seeds buried deep in the soil had sprouted, and the sprouts had stretched their waists and were about to break out of the ground. It wasn't a matter of time, but an opportunity. An opportunity that couldn't be simpler, and it will come naturally. This feeling. GLUO suddenly felt something. He stood up from the chair, looked at his palms, slowly clenched his fists, and after using up all his strength, he slowly loosened them, just like breathing. Just like the power was flowing with the rhythm of breathing, GLUO felt that the extremely warm energy was seeping out from all parts of his body. These strange energies, like a trickle of water, began to gather together, and finally, after accumulating to a certain extent, they turned into a growing stream of water, and began to flow in GLUO's body, washing every bone, and every inch of his internal organs. Is this the bronze level? This second seemed like 10,000 years. In the violent beating of his heart, GLUO's consciousness was pulled out of his body for a moment. And when GLUO regained consciousness, he seemed to have experienced some kind of reincarnation in the concept, and the whole person felt completely different from before. Like a new life. At this moment, GLUO could clearly feel that the source power was flowing endlessly between his bones and internal organs. As if adapting to something, every muscle in his body began to move slightly, constantly adjusting every part of his body, making him closer to perfection. Just as if he heard the call of his body, GLUO slowly closed his eyes and felt his new self. In a trance, GLUO's consciousness seemed to be thrown into an ocean of light. All his senses were filled with warmth and light. His body seemed to disappear, and he could no longer feel anything. Time passed by second, and GLUO in the deep sea gradually floated up. He began to feel his hands, feet, shoulders, neck, and head. The senses he had lost before returned one by one. GLUO slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, the world and his feeling was completely new. GLUO widened his eyes and breathed rapidly. The sweat on his cheek fell to the ground. GLUO watched the water droplets fall, but found that the sweat droplets in his sight became clearer than ever before. Everything seemed to slow down. GLUO saw the shape of the water droplets falling in the air, and finally fell to the ground again, breaking into pieces. GLUO slowly raised his head, like a newborn who just opened his eyes. The whole world in his senses was different. Vision, smell, hearing, taste, perception. GLUO was surprised to find that his 5 senses had improved more than twice as much as before, and his body's coordination ability was also beyond common sense. As long as a human body could do it, he could do it easily. It was just a thought. Without thinking, GLUO's fingers changed rapidly under his consciousness, almost with after images, forming the ninjutsu hand seals that he thought were very handsome in Naruto. At this moment, GLUO felt every detail of his body very clearly, his heartbeat, his breathing, the movement of every muscle and bone. And this is the perfect understanding of the body. Bronze level realm warrior, the source of power flows in the internal organs and bones. When advancing, the first of the 8 gates in the human body will be opened. Opening. The evolution it brings is called wandering, that is, thorough self-cognition. Know everything about yourself, and always feel your body and soul. Naturally, the changes in the 5 senses have their reasons. Just like the change from telephone lines to fiber optic networks, the download speed has increased from 0.5 megabytes per second to 50 megabytes. Although the behavior itself has not changed, something has changed in essence. The source power flows in the bones and internal organs, and the nerves and blood vessels of the realm warriors are naturally filled with source power. With the blessing of source power, the neural network of the realm warriors for consciousness transmission has surpassed the limit of the biological matrix of normal people, and this kind of strengthening will continue to strengthen and improve with the improvement of the realm warriors ranks, the growth of physical attributes, and the growth of source power, and finally reach a certain infinite concept. GLUO raised his hand and looked at his palm. After careful observation, he could vaguely see that in the bones of his palm, the source power like light dust and mist was slowly flowing. He tried to control the source power, which was much more natural than he imagined. It felt like using his arm. There was no obstruction or lag. GLUO tried to transfer the source power from the bones to the flesh and blood, but no matter how hard GLUO tried, he couldn't get the source power to leave the bones. Between the bones and the flesh, which should have coexisted, there seemed to be a copper wall and an iron wall, locking all the new source power of GLUO in the internal organs and bones. There is no physical enhancement, but the reaction ability has really changed dramatically. To be honest, GLUO didn't expect that there would be such a huge difference just by taking a step forward. To be frank, although GLUO and his previous self have exactly the same physical strength, if they really fight, GLUO can fight 3 of his past selves at the same time. Because the reaction ability and perception ability are no longer comparable to the past. My innate ability, finally. GLUO was surprised to find that the original talent named Return had changed in his feelings, and it was the change that GLUO wanted most. Return. When in contact with other evolvers, you can seize their innate abilities and return them after up to 12 hours. If described in words, compared with the previous time, returned 8 seems to have only changed a few words. However, the fewer words, the bigger the matter. The biggest change that GLUO gained after becoming bronze rank I was the control over his own innate abilities. Chapter 93, The Wanderer. From now on, when GLUO comes into contact with Sukinghan or other evolvers, whether to seize their innate abilities has become an option. As long as GLUO wants, he can still seize the superpowers of any evolver, but when he is kissing Sukinghan, he no longer has to worry about returned 8 inexplicably becoming Death Return. GLUO can choose whether to seize the innate ability, and similarly, when to give up seizing and return the innate ability to others has also become an option. The duration of seizing the innate ability is up to 12 hours, which has not changed. But from now on, GLUO can give up the superpower at any time after seizing the superpower. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 1 hour, 5 hours, anyway, it doesn't matter how long it is, as long as GLUO wants, he can give up the superpower and return it to the original owner. And the biggest advantage of this is that GLUO can give up the inappropriate ability at any time and invalidate the ability of the closest evolver. Even if GLUO encounters many evolvers, he can seize superpowers, use superpowers, and return superpowers. Then change one person, take the superpower, use the superpower, and return the superpower, and so on, for an infinite cycle. The stronger the enemy, the stronger GLUO's ability can become. Even if it is a melee, GLUO will become unstoppable. Finally, I can do a big fight. GLUO clenched his palms, took a deep breath, and slowly used the source power in his body. With GLUO's urging, the trickle that originally flowed naturally began to become rapid, and with it, the body was improved in more aspects. It's probably improved about 50%. GLUO really didn't expect that the source power would improve physical ability so much. It was already 4 times the physical ability of ordinary people. If it was improved by half, the direct combat power gain might be doubled. Moreover, with the protection of the source power, my bones are as hard as steel, and my internal organs are no longer a weakness. GLUO originally thought that he was strong enough, but when he had the source power, he realized that the gap between himself and the real evolver was so big. No wonder he was killed instantly by Sukinghan. They were really incomparable. GLUO walked around the room and practiced a few moves excitedly. The swift moves were just swung in the air, which could produce the effects of wind flow and air shock. It was really incomparable to the past. GLUO's eyes suddenly swept across the mirror. He seemed to have discovered something unexpected. He quickly stopped his body and walked to the mirror. At this time, GLUO suddenly found that his pupils were shining with dark purple. That was the mist and soft light effect that only source power had. GLUO didn't know what the attribute of his source power was, but his source power was indeed dark purple, just like the color of Zingarn's source power. The color halo of source power is not something that humans can create with scientific and technological methods. It is a kind of a live dazzling color, with faint light and mist mixed together, like the purple flowing in the sea of stars. When an evolver uses the source force, will the source force permeate the pupils and show the color of the source force? GLUO kept this in mind. Not only can he tell whether someone is an evolver, but more importantly, he can also know the source force attributes of the other party. Moreover, if he rashly uses the source force, it will obviously expose his identity. GLUO must consider this point when fighting in the future. Ah, it's so beautiful. GLUO looked at the color of his pupils in the mirror and couldn't get enough of it. Just as Crossing Yan said, the source force is the most magnificent scenery and the most real color in the body of a living being. Its brilliant splendor comes from the thoughts and souls, body and will of a living being. What it shines is the infinite mystery and unpredictable future. Ah, what a pitiful amount of source force. GLUO stared at it for about 10 minutes and suddenly found that he had used up 1/3 of his source force. Obviously, the improvement of the body by the source force is not without consumption. Now GLUO can only maintain it for about half an hour. Barely, he can finish a small battle. Now that I think about it, when Sukinghan and Shu Yuking fought me, they didn't use the source power. GLUO was a little arrogant before, but after becoming a true evolver, GLUO has completely understood his own strengths. The crazy plan against Meng Wu before has been deleted from GLUO's mind. He is really a weak chicken now and can't be arrogant anymore. It's true. The stronger you are, the more you understand that this world is unfathomable, and the more you have to be low-key. According to Crossing Yan, GLUO was in the transformation stage before, and now, because of the awakening of the source power, he has officially become a bronze rank I realm warrior. After careful experience, in GLUO's view, if the two ranks are used as a ruler, it will become a world of different levels of force in various novels. Realm warriors in the transformation stage are roughly equivalent to those legendary top-level generals in the Earth world, such as Yu Xiangyu, Lu Bu, Zhu Ringui and the like. Their physical abilities have been developed to the limit of ordinary people, but they still die directly when facing guns and bullets. The warriors of bronze rank I are similar to the warriors of the low-level martial arts world who have the setting of internal force. Their bodies and martial arts are tempered by thousands of hammers, and the internal force with enhanced effect can't withstand gun bullets, but they can still dodge. However, at the rank where GLUO is now, the source force only strengthens the body, so the battle between each other still focuses on the competition of martial arts. In the future, I need to practice martial arts well. GLUO has now made up his mind to learn something well, not just learning as before, but systematically understanding traditional martial arts and integrating it into his own battles. Since ancient times, the population of this country has been one of the highest in the world. The huge population has also made wars grand and bloody in troubled times. Traditional martial arts are ultimately for killing, and as a killing technique abandoned by long guns and short cannons, it is regaining its brilliance due to the new evolution of mankind. This world has never lacked wars and killings. As long as there are effective means, they will be picked up again. The more I understand, the more I realize that Xingyan's words are so important. GLUO recalled every detail of his meeting with Xingyan, and became more and more curious about Xingyan's identity. Where is she from, and why is she at the bottom of his consciousness? Forget it, I can't figure it out. Go to sleep. GLUO's greatest strength is his strong adaptability, or in other words, he is heartless. He never dwells on useless things, he will only constantly hone himself, and wait with peace of mind, the day when everything comes to light. The future has arrived. Volume 1, End. Chapter 94, Zhu Yi's Worry. 7:33 on January 21st, 3006. After the winter, Zhu Yi's life became leisurely. Although the heating in the old building was not very warm, it was not cold after all. He did not have to struggle so much every time he got up. Go to work, go to work. Zhu Yi put on his newly bought winter clothes, as if to cheer himself up, and went downstairs with a thump. At the door of the corridor, he greeted the neighbors he knew, and then quickened his pace. After eating steamed buns for a long time, Zhu Yi finally changed. He ate all the shops around him, and now he also eats some rice noodles for breakfast. Hot rice noodles, red chili oil, and a few bright ribs. Zhu Yi's beautiful day has begun. Since he took office at Chaodao Fitness Center, Zhu Yi's life has begun to flourish. After only 2 salaries, his small treasury has been completely filled. Just by teaching some martial arts moves, you can earn over 10,000 yuan a month. This is simply a dream come true. Zhu Yi worked very hard and received a lot of praise from students. He even won an award a few days ago. Of course, it was an ordinary award selected internally, but the bonus was quite a lot. To be honest, Zhu Yi is very satisfied with his current life. He couldn't be more satisfied. His job is decent and easy. He sends 5,000 yuan to his family every month, and he can use the rest for himself. Because he was afraid of embarrassing Brother G, Zuyi started to pay attention to his appearance recently. He didn't really understand things like buying clothes, but the enthusiastic girl accompanied him shopping for 2 days and bought several suitable clothes. Zuyi was very grateful to her and planned to buy her a gift, but he didn't know what to buy. When he asked Brother G, Gluo looked at him with envy and kicked him out. He just asked what gift to give, but it made Brother G angry. Zuyi didn't know why, and he was still a little unwilling to think about it afterwards. There was no way, so Zuyi bought a bracelet that made him feel painful. The girl liked it very much and even treated him to a meal. During the meal, because he couldn't think of a topic, Zuyi told the girl about Jie kicking him. The girl laughed so hard that she fell backwards, but she didn't explain anything to him. Later, he had more contact with the girl, and his colleagues around him began to bless him inexplicably. A few days later, Zuyi suddenly understood. It turned out that they thought he was in love. Zuyi really didn't think about this kind of thing. He was a rural child, stupid and naive, without education and no skills. How could such a beautiful city girl like him? However, Zuyi didn't say this explanation after all. He was a little reluctant to explain. Zuyi didn't sleep well in those days. Later, he really had no choice but to ask Brother G. The answer he got surprised him. Zuyi, don't be afraid. If you like her, go after her. As long as she is willing, everything can be solved. Don't look down on yourself so much. At least you know me, and I'm more than enough to accompany her. At that time, Brother G's expression was very serious when he spoke, so serious that Zuyi felt a kind of momentum. He didn't even know what to say and could only nod blankly. After that, Brother G gave him a lot of strategies. Zuyi went out with a girl several times, watched a movie together, and even held her hand once when something unexpected happened. From the bottom of his heart, Zuyi was really very grateful to Brother G. If he hadn't met him, he might have found a construction site and moved bricks in the wind and sun. He might also be a security guard somewhere, shivering in the wind and snow, saving money every month, and not even daring to buy a piece of clothing. Zuyi never talked about these favors. He always kept them in his heart, and kept them in his heart forever. His parents told him that a drop of water should be repaid with a spring. The master told him that a favor must be repaid, and a grudge must be returned. Brother G always showed a complicated expression when he mentioned repaying a favor. He wouldn't say anything, but would pat him on the shoulder and tell him to cheer up and work hard to hone his martial arts. So Zuyi really began to practice martial arts hard. In addition to the time for classes and communicating with girls, Zuyi spent all the rest of his time on martial arts. The traditional martial arts encourage real skills and learning. Zuyi would practice hard for 5 or 6 hours every day, even longer than his actual working hours. Zuyi thought that his boss would be very unhappy if he knew about this, but who knew that after the boss named Zizan knew about this, he not only did not criticize him, but instead gave him a raise. Later, Zuyi became a celebrity in the traditional martial arts, and many students who came to try out were allowed to observe his practice. At the beginning, Zuyi was not used to having people around him, but after Brother G's guidance, Zuyi gradually adapted to this noise. Martial artists should concentrate, and those who enter the Tao through martial arts should keep their original intentions. Zuyi's practice never slacked off, and his originally unfamiliar martial arts became more and more proficient. Moreover, in the traditional martial arts, there were more fights between instructors. Zuyi often communicated with an instructor who used a stick and benefited a lot. Zuyi had no advantages, but he was focused. In the beginning, he often lost to other instructors, but Zuyi did not admit defeat, but continued to improve and learn. Now, among all the instructors, Zuyi has become the strongest one. Of course, compared with Brother G, there is still a world of difference. But Zuyi is very satisfied with this. A few days after Christmas, Brother G recruited another instructor who used guns. He was a really capable person. Although the type of gun he used was different, Zuyi felt that he had seen a new world. Another strange thing was that Brother G had more exchanges with the instructors, but these exchanges were basically all about martial arts. Moreover, Brother G also opened up a special martial arts practice room for himself. Others were not allowed to enter casually. He was the only one there every day. Zuyi had of course been there, but there was actually nothing special inside. Maybe Brother G's martial arts practice method was special, and he didn't want people to see it. Brother G practiced martial arts very crazily, even crazier than himself. Every day at 9:30, he would go into the practice room and not leave until he got off work in the evening. The office specially prepared for GLUO was basically empty. If there was anything, he would go to the practice room to find him. Later, Zuyi occasionally heard that Brother G seemed to have been stimulated by something. The small shop named Spring Cake Shop was demolished by force. It was demolished by people sent by Mr. Meng Wuai, who is very famous in the underworld. Since then, it has been more than a month, and no one has seen the proprietress of the cake shop. Rumor has it that the girl was killed by Mr. Meng Wuai, and Brother G practiced martial arts every day just to avenge her. Of course, Zuyi knew that the news was false, but seeing how desperate Brother G was, Zuyi felt that revenge should be true. Zuyi even went to ask Brother G, but unfortunately, Brother G told him not to worry, not to think too much, and not to get involved. To be honest, Zuyi is not afraid that GLUO will suffer, but the problem is, if the matter gets out of hand, or even someone is killed, what should Brother G do? Zuyi, I'm really worried recently. Chapter 95, GLUO's meanness. What is Zuyi worrying about? GLUO sat in the fragrant stew shop, eating sesame cakes and drinking spicy broth, feeling very comfortable. Nearly a month had passed since Christmas Eve, and none of the things GLUO was worried about had happened. His life was as peaceful as warm soup. Originally, GLUO was planning to resolve Meng Wu as soon as possible and finalize the compensation issue of the cake shop, but what GLUO didn't expect was that Su Qinghan told him not to worry and wait a little longer. GLUO didn't know what he was waiting for at first, but he knew that Su Qinghan had been busy with something very important. Later, when Su Qinghan occasionally talked about her recent busyness, she was a little evasive, but after several attempts, she also revealed some information. She wanted to attend an auction, and she was very interested in an antique in it. I don't know why, but after hearing Su Qinghan's explanation, a word suddenly popped up in GLUO's mind: holy relic. Please, just hearing the name, you know it's a very powerful thing. GLUO had only seen one holy relic, which was Shu Yuking's sickle, although it was a pity that it was broken. But GLUO had not forgotten that it was with this holy relic that Shu Yuking killed Su Qinghan with a completely unharmed method. If it had not been an accident, it would have been more than enough to kill him. Could the holy relic that Su Qinghan prepared so well be an ordinary one? It must be a treasure. At this point, GLUO still didn't know what was going on. There were many people eyeing the treasure, and Su Qinghan wanted to get it, but he didn't have enough money. How to get it, and what method to use to get it are what Su Qinghan has been thinking about recently. Knowing the trouble of this matter, GLUO no longer mixed it up. In Su Qinghan's heart, GLUO was just an ordinary person, and she definitely didn't want him to know about her plan of doing everything possible. Compared with the holy relic, Meng Wu, the cake shop, and the little compensation were all things that could not be smaller. At such a critical moment, GLUO knew that keeping a low profile was the most important thing, so he gave up all his plans and developed with peace of mind. However, because of this holy relic, GLUO was also very unhappy. After spending a wonderful Christmas Eve, the distance between the two people was originally shortened. The next period of time should be a hot honeymoon period, which is the best time to improve the favorability. But what is very annoying is that Su Qinghan put all his thoughts on the holy relic, and GLUO was left out. It was really very angry, but there was nothing he could do. So, GLUO turned his anger into motivation and began to practice martial arts crazily. So, sometimes, the truth is so boring and hilarious. Zuyi thought that GLUO was going to fight hard and was sharpening his will and weapons with sweat. But in fact, GLUO was just in a bad relationship, and he was angry and turned his grief and anger into diligence. Just like a child. In this world, there are very few things that money can't solve. If there are, it's that the money is not enough, so just add more money. Although GLUO is a master of traditional martial arts, he is generous enough to distribute part of his share, so the instructors are very conscious and respect him very much. Without the intrigue, GLUO's work became simple and easy. He had a lot of time to waste, and this time was really important for an evolver who had just entered the bronze level. In the past, it was a hobby, but now it was to save his life. GLUO really practiced desperately. Basically, all the instructors in the gym were squeezed dry by GLUO. After losing interest in this group of instructors, GLUO abused his power for personal gain and hired a very powerful spear master, making a fortune. To be honest, these things, in ancient times, were passed down from father to son, and only a master like a father would teach them. But in modern times, they are all considered dragon slaying skills, and not many people will learn them. The less they are needed, the more humble they appear. Who would cherish their own things for the sake of making a living? The happiness of freeloading, of course. GLUO didn't learn everything. He knew that he couldn't chew too much. GLUO's original plan was to learn some freehand fighting and a weapon. His return date: if he wants to see superpowers, he must have some contact. So close combat is a direction that cannot be abandoned, so he must learn freehand fighting. When fighting, the opponent may have some strange weapons, such as Shoryuken's scythe. He has no weapons, so he can only hide. Otherwise, all kinds of holy relics can kill him, as long as they touch his skin, which is extremely dangerous. Therefore, learning a weapon is a must. At the beginning, GLUO considered swordsmanship, but the attack distance of swordsmanship is a bit short, and it is a controlled thing. You can't take it anywhere. Finally, after thinking about it, GLUO decided to focus on gunmanship. After all, when necessary, this thing can be beaten with any stick, and who said that you can't kill people without a gun head? When I was a child, I fought with a mop and dipped in shit, just like Zhao Yun in the world. With Zuyi and the gunmanship master who came with the mood, plus some things on the internet, GLUO practiced very well. If you want to be good at kung fu, you have to spend time slowly, and you can't be impatient. The spearmanship was settled, but GLUO was not satisfied with the freehand fighting. So he thought of a girl who was cute and good at fighting. Tang Ruoxi, a 16-year-old girl with twin ponytails, a big lolly with double A strength and speed, and a family inherited 36-way thunderhand, was fierce. The most important thing was that she was about to awaken her original talent and enter the transformation stage. For GLUO, who liked to cultivate, and like to observe, this was a good research object. So, without calling, GLUO really went to the school gate to block the other person. Tang Ruoxi, a young and beautiful girl who had just entered the first year of high school, had a very serious personality and studied very well. She had been the class monitor since she was a child. With the first place in the city, she was admitted to Changlin No. 1 Middle School and sat steadily in the position of class monitor, becoming the nightmare of all the students in the class. However, on that day, the three good student in the teacher's mind, the pride of heaven in the eyes of the neighbors, and the peerless good child in the eyes of the parents, broke her perfect golden body at the school gate, or the image was shattered. The next day, everyone in Changlin No. 1 Middle School knew that Tang Ruoxi, a student in class 1, grade 1, was picked up by a handsome older brother from outside the school after school. During the time, the two of them were talking and chatting, including but not limited to, Tang Ruoxi, I like you very much. Tang Ruoxi, I miss you so much that I can't sleep. Tang Ruoxi, I really need you. Let's create legends together. Tang Ruoxi, if you have any conditions or needs, just ask. I will give you any amount of money. Tang Ruoxi, the relationship between us will be closer than your parents in the future. Don't be embarrassed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96, Tang Ruoxi's anger. Ah, that bastard. I'm going to kill him. In the steaming little shop, Tang Ruoxi sat on a bench, staring fiercely at the buns in front of her. The chopsticks in her hand were broken by her with a snap before they were even stained with any oil. A lifetime of fame. A lifetime of fame. Her fame, purity, and perfect character were all ruined by that GLUO. If she couldn't beat him, Tang Ruoxi would have wanted to fight him to the death. But unfortunately, even if she really fought him to the death, she would only be beaten up, and the other party would be unscathed. Oh, so angry. The more Tang Ruoxi thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Finally, after eating 2 buns, she finally couldn't help crying out of grievance. "Oh, my dear, what's wrong? Is it spicy?" "No, I'm not." Tang Ruoxi wiped her tears while continuing to eat the buns. The aunt of the shop patted her on the back and scooped her a bowl of porridge. "My dear girl, there is nothing to worry about. Did you break up with your boyfriend? It's nothing. You are so handsome, you can find anyone." I didn't. Tang Ruoxi drank her soy milk, but it was already cold. She drank another mouthful of porridge and was scolded by the porridge again. Woo 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 woo. Tang Ruoxi was so angry that she started crying again. It's not that Tang Ruoxi is fragile and can't stand the blow. She has been practicing martial arts since she was a child, and she pays the most attention to tempering her character. But she is a 16-year-old girl, let alone a boyfriend. She doesn't even have a slightly better male friend. The people she contacts the most are some brothers, but she is very careful and keeps a distance. There are countless people who confessed to her, but she never said anything, decisively rejected, and directly chased away those who pestered her. This year, she just entered the first year of high school, and she was well behaved in school, just wanting to study hard and not let her parents worry. But who knows, there are unexpected events. A certain bastard actually ran to her school to block the door and dragged her to run 2 streets in front of all the classmates. Bastard. Shameless. Turtle calf. Tang Ruoxi was really mad at him. Did he know what the school said about her? Those sharp-tongued and mean girls said that she pretended to be innocent in school, but actually had a boyfriend outside of school, and they all ran to the school gate to say sweet words. And the boys who were competing with their girlfriends were even more excessive, saying that she only allowed the officials to set fires and not allow the people to light lamps, and she was showing off her power in the class. In fact, she didn't set an example at all, which was much more excessive than them. The most disgusting thing is that some people who don't have a good relationship with him have finally found a breakthrough in her. They are sarcastic all day long, and they are gossiping, putting all kinds of things that have nothing to do with her on her. Some people even say she changes boyfriends every day. What a joke. Her future boyfriend must be tall, handsome, gentle and firm, just like Zhongli. Those bastards. Tang Ruoxi wiped away her tears. Her eyes were red, but the girl did not give in. The more those people hit her, the more she wanted to let them see that she was invincible. Let those idiots make up stories. The clear ones are clear, the turbid ones are turbid. She acted openly. What was there to be afraid of? The most regrettable thing was that she couldn't do anything to those disgusting idiots. When she was in elementary school, a little boy always bullied her, which made her very angry, so she wanted to teach him a lesson, but she didn't expect to use too much force, and broke his leg. Since then, her parents ordered her not to do anything, especially not to do anything to her classmates. For so many years, she, Tang Ruoxi, endured humiliation and always let those little bitches go. Now, they are getting more and more excessive, but she can't do anything to teach those idiots a lesson. She really hates it. Wait, you won't have a good time. Tang Ruoxi picked up her school bag and walked out of the store. She refused the kindness of the boss lady and paid for the bowl of porridge. One thing is one thing, accept the kindness, but the debt must be paid. Tang Ruoxi never owes favors to anyone, nor does she accept the kindness of others. Similarly, she will remember the malice of others for the rest of her life. Carrying her school bag, Tang Ruoxi angrily began to walk to school. Every boy who stared at her would be glared back by her. GLUO. Tang Ruoxi gritted her teeth and continued to grit her teeth. GLUO, this guy really did everything he could to get her to be a teacher at Xiaodao. Tang Ruoxi's own family runs a martial arts school. Normally, it is impossible for her to teach in someone else's martial arts school. However, GLUO, that bastard, is like a hole in his brain, making such a wishful request. What's more, he threatened her that, if she didn't go, he would come to the school gate, to block her every day, send her food and flowers every day, rain or shine, and show her great care, until she agreed. To be honest, it's creepy. Tang Ruoxi had never seen such a shameless person, and the means he used were extremely despicable. He just wanted to spread rumors about her in the school, so that she couldn't stand it and then surrender. But who was she? Tang Ruoxi. How could she surrender? However, it had to be admitted that GLUO was very generous. Although she was only a freshman in high school, the salary he paid for each class was really not small. She only needed to work part-time for 2 days a week, and the money of 648 yuan would come out. She was a little tight on money recently, in order to make Zhongli full of life, so she could really consider it. Oganiu came out too, and she liked it too. After all, one life was not very useful. If it was full of life, it must be very powerful. Anyway, it's all his money, it seems. Not that hard to accept. Tang Ruoxi pulled her left ponytail, and her resistance to GLUO was a little less. To be honest, the 36 Thunder Hands was indeed a martial art passed down by their family, but in this era, practicing martial arts was useless, it was hard and tiring, and there was no great future. In the past, the ancestors said that the 36 moves of Thunder Hands should be passed down to males, not females. But now, her brother doesn't practice it at all. He studies hard and wants to go to college, to become a great scientist. So, her father still has to listen to her mother, and not let his son learn martial arts, so that he can concentrate on studying. But unfortunately, her brother is too weak, and finally got an ordinary undergraduate degree, with no future. As for her, she is born to like martial arts, and has good talent. After begging her father for a while, she was allowed to learn. Later, her father was laid off, and had no job to do, so he changed his career, and opened a martial arts school. Unexpectedly, the business was really good, and he made a lot of money. Times have changed. So many family heirlooms have been filmed into videos and spread wildly on the internet, and they haven't seen anyone lose anything. So, the 36 moves of Thunder Hands no longer needs to be kept secret. It's nothing for her to be a teacher at the Xiaodao Fitness Center. HMPH. Wait. I'm going to teach those students well, and leave halfway through, so that all those students can come to my martial arts school. Spreading rumors has caused me trouble, GLUO, and you're not going to have it any better. Chapter 97, Su Qinghen's Struggle. GLUO, I'm not as good as you. Su Qinghen read the new message on the phone softly, but didn't react immediately. After a few seconds, Su Qinghen understood the meaning of the text message and laughed. It's a good day again. Su Qinghen stretched, put down GLUO's phone on the table, turned around and walked to the kitchen. A new day has begun, and it's time to make breakfast. Since Christmas Eve, her relationship with GLUO has stabilized. Because she has been very busy recently, Su Qinghen has not chatted with GLUO much, but GLUO cooks dinner every night. After not having to run the cake shop, Su Qinghen also had some free time, went to bed later, and got up later in the morning. GLUO originally wanted to make breakfast for Su Qinghen, but was rejected by the girl, but she accepted to have dinner together. Now GLUO goes home much earlier than before, and he cooks in different ways every day, wishing to make Su Qinghen a pig. Especially last night, GLUO was very considerate, and made a super spicy hot pot. Su Qinghen enjoyed it very much, and was a little full in the end. Originally, Su Qinghen said that he would not drink anymore, but because he was very happy, he still drank a little at GLUO's instigation. As a result, GLUO, the idiot, forgot his mobile phone on the table in the end. However, seeing that his cooking was delicious, Su Qinghen chose to forgive him. GLUO's mobile phone now has no password. His mobile phone is placed there, which means that Su Qinghen can check it. However, until now, Su Qinghen is not interested in doing such things. Just now, her mobile phone suddenly rang, and she looked at it. Tang Ruoxi, that little girl, must be mad. GLUO, you are really good at playing tricks on people. Su Qinghen sat back at the table with a simple breakfast. At this time, the girl named Tang Ruoxi sent another text message, and the words were full of anger towards Gluo. Of course, Su Qinghan would not reply to the message on behalf of Gluo. If it was a big problem, she might send Gluo a mobile phone, but it was just such a small matter, she would not care. After all, she really has a lot of things to do. Beep beep. At this time, Su Qinghan's phone suddenly rang. She clicked on the hidden software and ate breakfast while reading the reply from the message provider. Nearly a month ago, she met Shu Yuking when she was visiting her friend's grave. The conversation between the two was actually quite good at the beginning. But later, due to the difference in concepts, the talks broke down after all, and she almost flipped over because of Shu Yuking's sneak attack. However, she did not gain nothing. During the casual chat with Shu Yuking, she got a piece of news. News about a holy relic. That is not an ordinary holy relic. For Su Qinghan, in order to save Mu Yingluo, she must get this holy relic. At all costs. Trap? Of course it's possible. But some things, just because you know it's a trap, don't you take it? This is an open conspiracy. Su Qinghan has no choice at all. As long as the other party takes out the real thing, she will definitely go. It's troublesome. In a month, Su Qinghan spent nearly half of the time to confirm the authenticity of the holy relic. In the remaining time, she began to build a plan, striving to be foolproof. After so many confrontations, Tang Zujian should have guessed the ability and limitations of her death return. He must have laid a net to catch her. But this kind of ultimate trap is not without benefits. At least, the holy relic must be real. I'm alone, and it is a bit troublesome after all. After reading the message, Su Qinghan cleared the software record and then ate breakfast in a few mouthfuls and returned to the bedroom. To be honest, Su Qinghan has been struggling in recent days, struggling to make a decision. In the end, do you want Gluo to help? Needless to say, Su Qinghan has become a thorn in Tang Zujian's side. The entire Zinke Biopharmaceuticals is targeting her at all costs. At that time, the inspection of the auction house will be outrageously strict. It is estimated that every guest who participates in the auction will be dug out of the past, and Su Qinghan will not be able to get in. At the same time, on that day, there must be countless ambushes and surveillance around the auction. No matter how Su Qinghan disguised himself, he would definitely not be able to sneak in. Don't forget that among the evolvers serving Zinke Biopharmaceuticals, there are many people who are good at searching and identifying. This also caused that, unless Su Qinghan attacked by force, he could not even get close to the auction site. But if he didn't confirm the authenticity of the holy relic, how could Su Qinghan invest all his chips and gamble on the outcome? Therefore, Su Qinghan needs Gluo, a person with a clean identity. At that time, if Gluo participated in the auction, he could enter the venue openly and even directly bid for the holy relic with money. Of course, rationally speaking, since Tang Zujian didn't know where he got the holy relic, he had no intention of spitting it out. No matter how much he raised the price, he would never get the holy relic. Therefore, Su Qinghan only needed Gluo to judge the authenticity of the thing, and Su Qinghan would do it himself after that. This kind of thing sounds harmless, but, under Tang Zujian's net, how could it not be dangerous? When necessary, Su Qinghan can indeed return from death, and go back to the time when Gluo was safe. But, once Gluo gets involved, he will definitely be exposed under Tang Zujian's all-pervasive investigation. That kind of result and state are really too terrifying, and Su Qinghan has experienced it himself. Gluo will lose everything he has now, and all the people related to him will be screened, and many of them will die completely. Faced with this situation, Gluo has no choice at all. He can only choose to follow Su Qinghan and hide like a rat. On the black market, Gluo's head will be hung high, and it is an adventure for him to go out of the house. He doesn't know when he will be shot dead. No exceptions, no other choice. Tang Zujian has always forced her like this. He has been overwhelmed by dealing with her alone. If she has her own team, the threat will increase exponentially. It is precisely to avoid this kind of situation that anyone who has anything to do with her will be killed at all costs. Completely. What should I do? Su Qinghan really didn't know what to do. The holy relic was too important. She must not lose it. She was willing to die many times. But what about Gluo? She made him pay such a huge price. What could she give him? Sukinghun was sure that she could not protect an ordinary person from being hunted down by a dragnet. To put it bluntly, should she use Gluo's life to add a big bargaining chip to the matter of snatching the holy relic? One day, I will definitely not die well. Chapter 98. A bit of coincidence. In the overflowing meat aroma, Gluo's appetite was also completely mobilized. He picked up the big bowl and drank the soup inside, but he still felt unsatisfied. Originally, Gluo just planned to have a bite for breakfast, but who knew that the taste of this braised pork chop was so good? After eating a large portion, Gluo was not satisfied, but even hungrier. Boss. Just the same, another one. Gluo is now a rich man. He can't eat luxury things, but he can still order braised pork. The shop owner agreed to Gluo, turned his head, and looked at Gluo's empty big bowl, and was a little shocked. This young man looks gentle and refined. How can he eat so much? This braised pork shop is the first time Gluo has come, but in fact, this shop is very famous. Not only is the price very affordable, but the quantity is also very large. There are regular customers every day. You fell asleep with your palms lightly clasped. There are shallow dimples on your cheeks at this moment. I'm looking at you. I have a lot to say to you. Gluo sat on a stool, humming a song softly, and he was obviously in a good mood. Gluo deliberately left the cell phone at Sukinghun's place last night. The relationship between the two has become much closer. Letting her see the cell phone again can also deepen her trust in himself. Of course, Gluo is not keeping it. After all, he has two cell phones, one in his hand, and one at home. It's not too much. Anyway, Gluo himself feels that, since he officially became a bronze rank evolver, his brain has become more useful. In short, the future is promising. After a month of adaptation, Gluo has completely gotten used to his current self. He occasionally used the wrong strength before, but now, as long as Gluo doesn't show it, he looks like an ordinary person. Like you, I don't understand what the future holds. I want to block the wind and rain and confusion for you. Let your sky only see rainbows until one day you become me. Gluo sang, and suddenly lowered his voice. He looked at the four people who walked into the stewed pork shop, and his fingers tapped on the table like piano keys. Boss, same as usual, 4 sets. Kao Junyan was obviously a regular here. He and his 3 companions sat in the inner seat and chatted about work. Without Gluo's interference, Kao Junyan is still working as a bar security guard. I don't know if it's because of prejudice or because they are too clinging. Anyway, judging from their tired expressions, these 4 people must have worked the night shift last night, and they were the worst field security guards. In this winter, parking lot security is not a job for humans. Not only is it very cold, but it's also like being treated like a grandson. There are many sons of rich and powerful families who come to the bar to drink. They get drunk and park their cars randomly, and there is no way to control them. What's more troublesome is that many people got their driver's licenses through connections, and they are complete road killers. Security guards sometimes have to act as parking attendants, which is hard and troublesome. This job is so fucking frustrating. The 4 of us have been doing this for a month or 2, and they still think we are newcomers. That captain is really disgusting, but what can we do? He doesn't assign us shifts, and keeps asking the 4 of us to watch the parking lot. What can we do? Brother Karo, come up with an idea. Among the 4 of us, only you have a good brain. It's not a good idea to work the night shift like this every day. It's too bullying. The 3 fellow villagers sitting next to Kao Junyan all listened to his decisions. At first, they were very satisfied with this job, thinking that they earned a lot, and the work was not tiring. But after working for nearly 2 months, they all found that the manager of this bar was making fun of them. Making them work the night shift and freezing every day was simply bullying. What can we do? What else can we do? Beat him? Kao Junyan was also angry, but he was strong. So what could he do? If we beat him, we will lose a salary. We are short of money right now. How dare we quarrel with him? Don't forget, the 4 of us live in the dormitory. If we change jobs, the accommodation alone will cost a lot of money. Kao Junyan is not a person who will be bullied, but the 4 of them are helpless. It is not easy to have a job with a satisfactory salary. Let them be bullied. What else can they do? After listening to Kyo-Janian's words, the other three also lowered their heads. When you are out there, a penny can't kill a hero. The four of them are uneducated and rely on their strength. What else can they do? Just endure it. But don't worry too much. Just endure it a little longer. They can't keep going like this. The four of us are not pushovers. Kyo-Janian is worthy of being the leader of the four people. After explaining the irreversible facts, he stuffed a carrot into each of them. If nothing else, the future is promising. That idiot captain can see that the four of us are sticking together, and he also knows that he can't bully us to death. So there is only a limit to this matter. Be patient and stand firm first. Kyo-Janian is indeed well versed in the art of speaking. As soon as he finished speaking, the other three guys immediately smiled. At this time, 4 large bowls of braised pork and a large stack of noodles were just served. Smelling the aroma of the broth, the 4 guys couldn't help but smile. Here's the money. Kyo-Janian gave the money directly without consulting his 3 companions. The person sitting next to him immediately wanted to stop him, but he pressed him on the stool. Brother Kyo, you are also short of money. Everyone pays for their own meals. Isn't that what we agreed on? It's not that hard to make a bowl of stewed pork. You all followed me. I feel a little uncomfortable working like this. Brother Kyo, what are you talking about? If you hadn't brought the 3 of us out, how could we earn so much money? How much can we earn in the village all year round? Okay. Stop shouting. We are in someone else's store. Eat quickly. Kyo-Janian calmed down his excited companions, added some chili to the bowls of the other 3, and then added it to himself. Eat something hot. Let's go back to the dormitory and have a sleep. We still have to work tonight. Kyo-Janian calmed down his 3 companions and then started to eat. He ate very quickly, as if he was fighting for food. On the other side, Gluo sat on the chair with a calm face. After listening to the conversation between the 4 people, Gluo stopped knocking on the table and sat up straight. Sir, your set meal. Thank you. Gluo took the set meal from the boss, added some chili and vinegar, and slowly started to eat. His appetite was not as good as before. At this time, the time was a little after 7:30 in the morning. Many people who work outside do not have the habit of cooking. Most of them come to the store to eat, and this braised pork restaurant is obviously their first choice. Gluo had just taken a few bites when he saw a scoundrel walking in from the door. He found a seat and sat down. He casually ordered a set meal and a side dish. Everything was an ordinary daily routine. The gangster sat on the chair and his eyes began to wander around habitually, but when his eyes fell on Gluo, the expression on his face suddenly changed. Chapter 99. Stable. Gluo certainly felt the gangster's gaze, but he didn't care about it. He continued to eat leisurely, as if he didn't notice anything unusual about the other party. On the other side, after seeing Gluo, the gangster's casual attitude immediately changed. He changed his posture and sat as straight as he did in school. In the morning, people came and went quickly in the restaurant. Almost no one cared about the situation of a diner. The gangster also restrained his attitude. After the store served the stewed pork, he slowly started to eat. The gangster didn't really focus on eating. He was always very careful about the situation around him. He could even be described as careful. After a while, he took out his mobile phone and sent a few messages. After a while, his mobile phone rang. The gangster seemed to be startled and quickly turned down the ringtone and then sent a message. In the hot morning of the stewed pork restaurant, there seemed to be nothing unusual. After eating another half bowl of stewed pork, Gluo turned his head and looked at the gangster. The gangster was obviously eating, but soon felt Gluo's gaze. He buried his head in the bowl and ate voraciously. Gluo casually looked away, as if he didn't notice the other person's problem. He picked up the bowl, drank a mouthful of soup, and suddenly stood up. Hello, can I sit here? Hello, who are you? Kyo-Janian didn't expect that someone would suddenly come over when he was having breakfast. He looked Gluo up and down and made a gesture of invitation. Since becoming a bronze level I evolver, Gluo's temperament has become more profound. Just standing face to face, there is no way to tell Gluo's background and personality. Moreover, GLUO now has some savings, and the clothes on his body are all newly bought. Before, he didn't have a favorite person, so he could wear whatever he wanted, but now with Su King-han, GLUO pays more attention to his image. Now, no one dares to look down on GLUO when they see him, let alone Kao Junian, who is at the bottom. He has already drunk up the stewed meat at this time, and the half piece of bread left in his hand is not embarrassed to eat it dry, but directly put it on the plate. My name is GLUO. I am an ordinary person who needs help. The smile on GLUO's face was neither distant nor enthusiastic. He did not ask Kao Junian and others what their names meant, but his words showed that he needed help. My name is Kao Junian. Kao Junian noticed the meaning in GLUO's words, so he just reported his name, but did not say whether he could help GLUO. I have to admit that Kao Junian is quite powerful. Not only is he good at winning people over, he is also very sensitive to people's attitudes. He will choose to get close to them when necessary, but he will not really be shameless and stick to them. I'm really sorry to disturb you rashly. As an apology, please have breakfast. GLUO waved his hand and called the waiter, then ordered 4 bowls of stewed meat, some hard dishes, and opened a bottle of good wine. Kao Junian did not stop GLUO. His 3 companions turned their heads and stared at him. Kao Junian shook his head, indicating not to worry. To be honest, Kao Junian was also very curious about what GLUO wanted to do. Kao Junian was very good at judging people, but when facing GLUO, he couldn't tell his level at all. However, Kao Junian was sure that this GLUO must be extraordinary. Since the other party was not an ordinary person, Kao Junian was also happy to get along with him, but GLUO was not only arrogant, but also mysterious, which made Kao Junian reserved his attitude. As soon as he came up, he said that he needed help, but he didn't say what he needed help with. He reported his own name, but didn't ask the names of others. He said he was treating them to an apology, but he ordered all the dishes himself. Obviously, this person had a purpose to contact them, but he wanted to maintain the initiative, so he made this scene. If it was in his early years, Kao Junian would not say anything, and just throw away his chopsticks and leave. What kind of a person are you, so pretentious? It's your business, whether you have money and power, it's none of my business. If I get angry, I'll beat you up. Why are you pretending? In the past, Kao Junian was still at the age of being hot-blooded, but now, he has matured and learned to be patient. What's more, the whole person showed goodwill. Compared with some people in the village, he was an angel. After all, he was treated to a table of stewed pork and a table of dishes. Life and society have worn away many of Kao Junian's edges. His early impatient temper is gone. He can also wait for GLUO, who is sitting on the diote. On the other side, Kao Junian's 3 companions were quietly waiting for the dishes to be served. They knew their own weight and they would not suffer if they followed Kao Junian. They did not understand this kind of occasion and did not speak. Moreover, they secretly glanced at GLUO and felt a little scared. This person's eyes did not look sharp, but when he looked at you, you felt that you were seen clearly, that every move was seen through by the other party, and you did not even have the idea of resisting. Therefore, at the whole dinner table, except GLUO and Kao Junian, no one dared to speak. During the serving of the dishes, GLUO did not mean to speak. Kao Junian sat next to him with his hands on his knees, clenched tightly. To be honest, this feeling is a bit hard to bear. Kao Junian feels that he has already attached great importance to the other party, but he did not expect that he was still calculated by GLUO. Obviously, neither of them spoke, but GLUO just smiled and observed the 4 of them, which made them feel like a thorn in their backs and fidgeted. GLUO always maintained goodwill without the slightest sharpness. Rather than saying that the atmosphere between the 5 people is wrong, it is better to say that the atmosphere has been controlled by GLUO and turned into a kind of momentum. This momentum forced Kao Junian and made him very uncomfortable. On the court, among the 4 of them, Kao Junian was the leader and only he spoke, and the other 3 were supporting roles. But if he spoke at this time, Kao Junian always felt that he was crushed by GLUO and had the intention of sticking to him actively. but he kept silent and was looked up and down by Gluo like a butcher staring at a pig, which was extremely uncomfortable. As for turning against him, when he was forced into a corner, he sat here and didn't say anything more. He also invited you to dinner. Why did you turn against him? Moreover, the other party is sitting here, which means they are confident that they can crush you to death. Even if you fall out, you will be suppressed. That's right. Gluo sitting there gave Kao Janian and the other four this feeling. As steady as a mountain, as powerful as thunder, his attitude is like a spring breeze, but the side behind it must be as cold as winter. Kao Janian wanted to speak several times, but when the words came to his lips, he took them back, because Gluo's attitude was ambiguous, and he didn't know what to say. But, fortunately, the dishes in the braised pork restaurant were cooked very quickly. The waiter arranged the dishes on the table, opened the wine, and put it on the table. Come on, sorry to bother you, I'll toast you for chapter 100, hiring. Although Gluo was toasting, he held the wine glass in his right hand, and placed his left hand on his knee, and the whole person was inexplicably majestic. Gluo did not give Kao Janian and the other four people a chance to refuse this glass of wine. It was obviously Gluo's toast, but the other four people at the table were completely suppressed by Gluo's aura. They could only raise their glasses and drink the wine. The dishes in this restaurant are good. Don't waste them. Eat them all. Gluo clearly said that he was an ordinary person who needed help, but from the moment he sat down at the table, he had no intention of asking for help at all, just naturally expressing his kindness. Kao Janian's three companions obviously knew that they could not interrupt, so they simply buried their heads in eating. They also liked this braised pork restaurant very much, but for them, the price was still a little expensive. Coming here to eat a bowl of braised pork, even if it satisfied their cravings, they were really full and felt very distressed. Now, Gluo was treating them, and he ordered so many dishes. They were all young men in their early 20s. It was a time when they could eat, so how could they care about etiquette? Kao Janian filled Gluo's glass with wine, and he couldn't say anything to his companions, who were eating beside him. How could they know the intricacies of human interaction? If he hadn't led them, they would have been sold and had to pay for it. Mr. Gluo, is there anything I can help you with? Kao Janian was really uncomfortable with Gluo's performance of taking the initiative, so he stopped covering up and directly broke the window paper. You four are security guards? Gluo asked knowingly. He looked at Kao Janian with a smile on his face, and the answer to this question was clear in his mind. Yes. Kao Janian actually wanted to break Gluo's speaking rhythm, but the initiative was in Gluo's hands, so there was really nothing he could do. This Gluo's aura was really too strong. When people negotiate with each other, the worst thing is to let the other party keep asking questions, but you can only answer yes and nod. This is a kind of psychological advantage in itself, and it is also a suppression of momentum. If you don't reverse it, you will always be led by the nose. Unfortunately, Kao Janian noticed this, but when facing Gluo, he was like a mouse in the hands of a cat, and he couldn't resist at all. As for me, I hire you to ensure my safety. Gluo raised his glass to Kao Janian, and then drank half a glass of wine. Kao Janian hurriedly picked up the glass, and drank it all. Hire us as bodyguards? Kao Janian really didn't expect that Gluo would ask this. The five of them were from the village. Although they had practiced their routes, they were bodyguards. Isn't this a joke? Professional bodyguards have practiced. When they encounter danger, they will directly block it. When it comes to life, it is possible to block bullets. Normal people seek benefits and avoid harm. How can they do that? And this Gluo asked them to be bodyguards. Isn't this a joke? Security guards and bodyguards are only one word apart, but the difference is thousands of miles. How much money can he pay for the five of them to be bodyguards? No, you want to buy their lives. Mr. Gluo, are you in any danger? No need to add Mr. Just call me Gluo. Gluo picked up the bottle and took the initiative to pour wine for Kao Janian. Kao Janian waved his hands repeatedly, but Gluo still poured it for him. I know you have doubts, so I won't lie to you. I'll be honest. Do you see that gangster over there? Gluo didn't shy away at all. He pointed at the gangster who was eating at the other end, with a calm face. I have offended him, not him, but their gang. I didn't expect that I would be met by him today. He must have called someone to come over. I was very panicked, gangster. Kyojanian and GLUO looked at each other for a few seconds. GLUO spread his palms very frankly, indicating that he didn't lie to them. You can go over and grab him and ask him now to see if I lied to you. Why don't you call the police? Although Kyojanian has good martial arts skills, he knows the rules of this society very well. When facing danger, he will think of calling the police first. What's the point of calling the police? Are they here? Did anyone beat me? You mean they will follow you first? Kyojanian understood what GLUO meant by this time. GLUO had a grudge against these gangsters and had been hiding well before, but he was encountered today. The other party called to report it, and it is estimated that someone will rush over later, and these people will not take action immediately. After all, it is broad daylight now. If they beat someone directly on the street, they may not want to go to the police station for tea. Therefore, someone will definitely follow GLUO later, and it is even possible that they will know where he lives. When there is no one at night, no matter whether it is sacked or smashed windows, it will be troublesome. How many people are there on the other side? Kyojanian thought about it and felt that if the price was right, this matter could still be done. After all, if GLUO hired them, he would have to pay them by the day, and there would be no problem during the day. At night, at most he could run away and always avoid danger. I don't know how many people there are. Why don't you catch that gangster and ask? GLUO was clearly being watched by his enemies, but he still looked calm. He seemed to just want to pay and leave everything to Kyojanian. Kyojanian didn't nod or shake his head, but his companion next to him secretly tugged at his clothes. Obviously, Kyojanian's three companions felt that this thing could be done and wanted Kyojanian to talk about the price. In other words, they wanted to catch the gangster and force him to ask how many people came so that they could negotiate the price. However, Kyojanian was not so short-sighted. How could he run to catch someone and ask? Now, GLUO asked them to be bodyguards. If they agreed, it would be a matter of paying money and counting the money day by day, which was reasonable. But if now they caught the gangster and asked how many people came, it would be arrogant not to give face to the gang and not to take them seriously. For gangsters like them, face is more important than life, because this is money, this is his power. So, Kyojanian should either refuse and not get involved in this mess, or agree directly and not think about how many people he will be enemies with. How about, do you want to ask? He is only one person. GLUO looked like a demon who tempted people to fall into the abyss. The three companions around Kyojanian all thought that this thing could be done, but they held back their excitement and waited for Kyojanian to make a decision. How much do you pay? 4 of you, 1 person a day, 500, how about that? GLUO held up 5 fingers and did not say anything final. After hearing GLUO's offer, Kyojanian's 3 companions' eyes lit up. 500 a day, 15,000 a month, not a small amount. To be honest, in broad daylight, the gangsters did not dare to take action at all. At most they would follow. At night, if there were really many people and the situation was not good, the 4 of them would run away, throwing this and that, and they did not believe that the gang members would chase them. Even if someone chased them in the middle of the night, could they catch up? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.